6:30, we're going to call the meeting, the August 14th meeting of the Nevada City Council to order. We will start with the Nisenan tribe recognition, and Councilmember Fernandez, would you please read I want to make sure I snag
Great pick, Gary, great pick. All right. We acknowledge that the Nisenan people are still here among us today, though nearly invisible. We understand that we are on Nisenan land that was never ceded, and the original tribal families have yet to recover from the near genocide of their people. As a resident or visitor in Nisenan land, we support the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe in efforts to stabilize their people, as well as their campaign to restore federal recognition.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Klein.
Thanks.
I called on you so I could refresh the memory, If you would speak the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, so adoption of the agenda, Council?
Everyone okay?
Excuse us. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're okay.
Doug Short
Nothing to
tonight.
see.
Need a seatbelt for that? There, okay. Adoption of the agenda. It's now time for any agenda modifications, any additional changes, consent items you'd like to pull, or any recusals.
Or even a roll call.
Get a phone book.
I missed that? I did. Wow.
That's a big recusal.
Okay. Let me back up. I'm new at this. So, roll call. Nancy Ashjian, is that, if I said that right? Perfect. For the city attorney's office is here for Dean tonight, who's on the road. And with that, Madam Deputy Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Ceci.
Here.
Councilmember, Fleming.
I'm here.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Klein.
Here.
And Mayor Peterson.
Here.
All members present.
All right. Okay, we'll keep these things in order now, Vice Mayor. Council, now is the time for any agenda modifications, any additional changes to the agenda, pull consent items, or recusals.
Mayor, I would like to recuse myself from consent item number 5, since I am a member of the 49er Rotary and I'm actively selling duck race tickets in case anyone's interested.
Nicely done. Okay. All right, we have that for the record. Recusal on item 5. Okay, so I am, okay, one time, look at that. All right, so we have tonight, okay, so looking for a motion and a second to adopt the agenda.
-5, right?
What?
No, he's a recusal
It's a recusal. He just-
for him.
Right, but if we're voting on the agenda,
You're setting it as it is, yeah.
This is to adopt the agenda, and then we'll deal with that at the consent. So I'm
I move we adopt the agenda.
Okay.
second.
Moved by Councilmember Fleming and second by Councilmember Fernandez. And we have tonight with us a presentation to the Nevada City Lions Club for their Pioneer Park irrigation of the Grove project. And I will turn that over to our city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Vern, if you want to join us, and anybody else that might be here from the Lions at the lectern there. We just wanted to thank the Nevada City Lions Club, one, for continuing to exist. There's many communities who have lost their Lions Clubs over the years, and we're very appreciative that the community members that keep it alive here do so. Also very supportive of everything that they've done for Pioneer Park over the years. Vern Taylor's the president. Has been working with city staff to install a sprinkler system in the Memorial Grove, which currently requires manual irrigation of that area along Nimrod there. So they did secure a proposal from Weiss Landscaping. Always nice to have a local company do the work, and they'll be fully funding the $5,100 project. So once it is complete, we'll be contracting with the well contractor to connect this system and our other irrigation in the park to get us off of treated water for the park irrigation and onto the well water there, although we'll still have treated water, obviously, for the bathrooms and other uses. So we very much appreciate the Lions Club's effort over the decades, and wanted the public to be able to hear what their gracious efforts will produce with this project. And with the mayor's permission, love to hear anything Vern might have to share.
Well, we'll start soon. I work with Shane on the connection with the city water system, which is a very easy, low impact for Public Works job. And then I'll work with the Weiss Landscaping and make sure everything goes well. And we will probably compact the trenches when the system's in and cover with the mulch, and then come back in late October and seed or sod, depending on Weiss Brothers Landscaping's recommendations. So I'll make sure everything's put back together and everything will be in better shape, and Public Works won't have to move sprinklers around anymore. Something that's been on my agenda for 15 years.
Thank you. Wow.
Right.
So any questions?
Thanks, Vern. Questions, comments?
Thank you. That's really, I mean, with all the hard work that our Public Works guys do, anything you can save them a little bit of time, and help make their job a little easier. And at the same time, beautify and make Pioneer Park better. I mean, I just love you for that, Vern. Thank you.
50 years I've been doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Comments?
Just that I am very glad that you're stepping up and doing what makes this community a good community, which is people helping people.
Councilman Hunt?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Vern, and go Public Works, But I think it's really important. I was really, really impressed with the bridge project a few years ago when the tree came out and took out the bridge, and how quickly you guys fixed that, or you folks fixed that. That was really important. It's just another addition to the great amount of work that you're doing, so thanks.
Just getting Falcone and I back together again was worth that project.
Yeah.
That was worth watching.
Really great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vern.
Thanks, Vern.
Okay, let's see. So that was our only presentation. So public comment, Government Code 5954.3, 54954.3 provides that any member of the public may address the city council on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. The Brown Act, with limited exceptions, does not allow the council or staff to discuss issues brought forth under public comment. The council cannot take action on non-agenda items. Concerns may be referred to staff or placed on a future agenda. Please note that comments from the public will also be taken on the consent calendar and each agenda item as it is heard. And we will limit public comment to 60 minutes and go forth.
I know you didn't.
Hey guys. I understand your desire to build consensus on this issue. I get where you're coming from. I did not have a good experience with CBI. I don't know anyone that I've spoken to post the event that did, and I'm finding it frustrating. I think that the consensus in this country and the consensus of our government is to support this genocide. It is your duty and your moral obligation as leaders to break with consensus. You're not going to build consensus against something everyone agrees is okay if you're not willing to stand up and say it's not. It's pretty simple. Would really, really encourage you to just put it to a vote. I'm sorry that this process isn't easier and that it's difficult for you and for all of us, but I think it's the right thing to do. Just put it to a vote tonight, vote on it, put it to bed. The CBI discussion, I don't feel like it's going to go anywhere, and a lot of us feel that way. So please just act on your morals, go against the grain a little bit. It's worth it. You have the right and freedom to do so and the obligation to do so. If you're feeling uncomfortable about the cost, the violence of decolonization, the inevitable violence of decolonization, colonization is inherently violent, and therefore decolonization is inherently violent. If you're scared that decolonization of these atrocities that are happening and the resistance against them is going to be violent, then stand with decolonization. Make it your priority, because that's the only way to de-escalate the violence. Support decolonization. That will make the world a better place, a safer place, a less violent place. If you think supporting colonization through our military, through Israeli military, through many other militaries, is going to make you safer, that is only going to be, the resistance is going to be much more violent. You have to resist it. You have to support resistance to have a chance for peace. You cannot suppress people forever. It doesn't work. So just put it to a vote. It's not, I mean, I understand it's uncomfortable, but it's not that big a deal. See what happens. Maybe something magical happens and you vote and it passes, and then we can all feel good. Thanks.
Thank you.
I love that optimism. Big magic will happen. I love that.
Good evening. My name is Tara, and I work here in Nevada City at a local nonprofit organization. We feed people that otherwise would not have access to food, so maybe you can imagine how heartbreaking it is to me to see an entire population being collectively punished, denied food, clean drinking water, fuel, and basic medical supplies with the full support of our government. This is why we've been coming to our local city council for the last 10 months to urge you to put forth a ceasefire resolution to add our voices to demand a stop to this injustice and cruelty. In 10 months, you've heard from so many of your community members at these council meetings and yet have not been moved to do so much as place the resolution on the agenda. Instead, there was a lengthy process put in place meant to stifle progress and to avoid taking action. It seemed to completely ignore the urgency of the situation. These are truly upside down times we're living in. We, the people demanding a ceasefire, are told that we support terrorists. We, the people that protest to stop the collective punishment of civilians and the murder of babies, are called rioters and violent. We, the people that come to the city council and demand we stand on the right side of history, are made to feel like a burden and a waste of your time. It is not complicated or difficult to speak out against a genocide when it is televised live right in front of our faces. Today, I saw a young boy, maybe 4 or 5, blown in half. Yesterday, I saw a young boy fully conscious with his foot dangling by a thread. And yesterday, I also saw a decapitated baby. I don't know if any of you have seen the decapitated babies, but they're on the screen every single day. There was the murdered 4-day-old twins and their mother. Their father had left to get their birth certificates and returned to find them all murdered by the Israeli occupation forces. I don't even think I can, or any of us can, like witnessing this, can begin to process the horrors our government continues to support and send billions to inflict this hell on Palestine and the people of Palestine. So all the propaganda, lies, and delusional excuses for these crimes against humanity will go down as a stain in our history which parallels the Holocaust of World War II. And knowing this history of the attempted extermination of European Jews and seeing how people can justify the dehumanization of an entire population is exactly why I find zero difficulty in standing up for Palestine and calling for others to join me. I continue to urge you all to put a ceasefire resolution on the agenda, and that includes an arms embargo to Israel and stop the slaughter of Palestinians. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Don Fraser. The atrocities in Palestine continue. Israel regularly assassinates journalists, 170 so far, political leaders, intellectuals, teachers, doctors, first responders, and children. 41,000 killed, 90,000 injured, who knows how many buried under the rubble. In the West Bank, every day houses are destroyed or taken over by settlers. Crops and orchards are destroyed or taken over by settlers. This is really no different than what was directed towards the Nisenan people referenced in your land acknowledgement at the beginning of the meeting. Israel, to my knowledge, has not complied with a single UN resolution ever. The apartheid state of Israel wages an air war with U.S.-supplied aircraft, missiles, and bombs against the people with no air defense system. The government of Israel is conducting a campaign of ethnic cleansing at best, or, as the International Court of Criminal Justice has found, genocide. More tons of bombs have been dropped on Gaza since October than the total dropped on London, Hiroshima, and Dresden during World War II. When elected to office, the city council, as a city council member, you put on a mantle of a shaper of society. You must decide what our society stands for and looks like. I urge you to pass a resolution calling on the government of the United States to discontinue all military and financial support to the State of Israel until they agree to a two-state solution, acknowledge Palestine as a sovereign nation, and return to pre-1967 borders. As an aside, today, maybe yesterday, they delivered 6,500 JDAM missiles. That's Joint Direct Attack Munitions. And gave them $18.8 billion to spend on military aircraft. If we quit spending all these billions of dollars on munitions around the world that just wreak havoc, maybe things like number 10 on your agenda tonight wouldn't be necessary. Thank you.
You done?
Hello, everyone. I haven't been here in a while, but I'm here to ask for the same thing. I'm here to ask that someone please just put the ceasefire resolution on the agenda. Let's just see what happens, because I feel like we've been in this holding pattern of trying to get consensus, but I am really struggling to see the value of this continued facilitated conversation meeting, because I don't feel like it's been transparent. I still don't understand how stakeholders were chosen. I'm a 3-digit resident. I've come to a lot of meetings, but I didn't get to be included in the community conversation. So I just feel like there's been a lot of things that weren't as transparent as we were led to believe that they would be. I don't understand why the professionals that we paid $30,000 aren't the ones that are going to give the recommendations, because I thought that we were doing this because you guys didn't know what to do. So I'm a little bit confused about where we're at with that. And it just kind of seems like we're just caught in a loop with it. And I feel like it's time to just put it on the agenda. I actually got to go to Burbank City Council, and I spoke at the meeting where they passed a ceasefire resolution. They were in session until 3 in the morning. And I watched hours of public comment, like hours and hours and hours of public comment. And everyone said the same things that we've said to you. So I don't know what we can do anymore to try and show you that we're your community and this is important to us. We now have spent, in my feeling, $30,000 more to enable a genocide, because we've continued to enable it by being neutral and by being silent. And I want to look to you guys for moral, principled leadership. I want you to take a stand for things. Neutrality is a trap. We are never all going to agree. You're not going to get 100% consensus. I'm asking for you to put it on the agenda. The city council in Burbank had different attachments that they had, and so people were able to submit different types of ceasefire resolution language. They went back and forth. There was people who were against the resolution that spoke at public comment that night. There was people on the council that were against the resolution, but they sat and they talked about it and they figured it out, and it took a long time, but it didn't take 10 months. And I just feel like we need to do this now, and I'm begging you. I can't beg you anymore, but I feel like that every time I come back here, and I'm just really asking my community to show up in this moment in a way that I can be really proud of and happy that we accomplished together right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Liz.
Hi, my name is Liz. Hi, and I'm a Grass Valley resident. I am here once again to ask for a ceasefire resolution to be put on the agenda. Last week, the Biden administration announced that they will be sending another $3.5 billion to Israel so that it can buy more weapons to kill more Palestinians. $3.5 billion in taxpayer money. We cannot even offer our veterans, elderly, or our most vulnerable people shelter or proper care. Did you know that over 13 million children in the United States are in households facing food insecurities, but we've got $3.5 billion for genocide? In the first 10 days of August, Israel bombed 9 schools. In some of these schools, 80% of the casualties were children. And wouldn't you know it, just hours after the Biden administration announced that they would be sending that $3.5 billion to Israel, Israel bombed another school in Gaza City, where men, women, and children were all standing together for their morning prayers. Israel slaughters them during their prayers, while they're in their safe zones, while in schools, while in their homes, refugee camps, in their mosques, in their hospitals, and in their most vulnerable moments. That one bombing during the morning prayer killed over 100 innocent people. The school was housing over 2,400 displaced people, mostly women and children, who had no place else to go. There is no place else to go. I want to show you guys something. So this is a map of Gaza, right here. All of those red spots are damaged and destroyed structures. Israel destroyed over 63% of all residential areas in Gaza. There is no safe area. There is nowhere for these people to go. They are locked in an open-air prison with bombs raining down on them daily. Israel is decimating a civilian population and calling it self-defense. Starvation and bombing civilians, mainly children, is not self-defense. Israel doesn't want a ceasefire. Israel doesn't want the hostages. Israel wants to exterminate Palestinians. Israel is exterminating Palestinians. Israel is committing genocide. And we are funding and arming them with money that we don't have, while our own citizens are struggling to survive, and our politicians don't care and they don't listen because there's no profit in peace. And I know that some of you believe that this isn't your problem and that this isn't what you were elected for, but it is. You were elected to represent the people of this city. You are the voices of your constituents. A great wrong is being done, and we are being forced into complicity by our own politicians. Who am I supposed to turn to? If I can't come to the mayor of my city or the city council members and say, hey, please use your voice to elevate mine and speak out against funding and arming a genocide, where do I go? What's happening right now in Gaza is not just about the Palestinians. This is an attack on humanity. Throughout history, the ones in power have only been able to commit these types of atrocities because of the silence of ordinary people. If you don't want to speak up as city council members, fine, then just speak up as human beings, the bare minimum. Calling for a ceasefire is the absolute bare minimum.
Thank you, Liz.
Hi, Mikos Fabersoon, 9 years a resident of Nevada City, now in the county. Be forewarned, I'm going to make judgments. It's genocide. It's another $20 billion to Israel, announced yesterday. It's two-faced. It's complicity by public officials who know better yet refuse to speak out. It's complicity by those of the public who know better but don't speak out. It's a war crime, rather a series of war crimes. It's fostered by an unregistered agent of a foreign government, AIPAC, which spends millions of dollars against those who run for office and who do speak out. It's a conundrum. It's doublespeak. It's duplicitous. It's a series of crimes against humanity. It's a lot of blah, 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 to quote Greta Thunberg. It's a failure of representative democracy. It's a stain on our collective moral fabric. Rather, it's the shredding of that fabric and stamping it beneath our feet. It's genocide. It's shameful that it has lasted 10 months. And for all that time, this body has only wanted to talk around it, not about it. It's a conflict with roots in the late 1800s. It's likely to continue under Kamala Harris, and it has, as it has under Joe Biden. But it certainly will continue until Israel ceases to exist as an apartheid, racist, and colonial state. Until then, it will be resisted and resisted for as long as it takes. And meanwhile, it's genocide in the name of these United States.
Thank you, Mikos.
Hello, my name's Dana Sanders. I'm a local resident, a 3-digit address in Nevada City. You, as a council, hold a particular responsibility as representatives of the people, your community, and the greater community, to educate yourselves on matters that concern more than a select group of Israelis. Have you done research on the history of the region? Do you know that the apartheid state of Israel was established, was land bought and sold by Europeans, by atheists, by people whose interest was only to invest, control, and dominate? Do you truly have reverence and respect for the indigenous people of this land that we occupy? Do you actually care about the atrocities imposed upon the Nisenan? Why do you give a land acknowledgement at the beginning of each meeting? Do you know why you're actually doing it? Is it expected of you? Does it mean anything to you personally? From this vantage point, it seems that the words are hollow. What's happening to the innocent people in Palestine is no different than what happened on this land 250 years ago. This community is expecting you to educate yourselves beyond hearsay, beyond opinion, and even beyond personal accounts of our local Israeli community. It's time to take the high road and help protect innocent children. It's time to stop making excuses for why it's okay to blow them to bits, literal bits and pieces. If you actually know why Israel is mowing the lawn, as they say, and you remain on the fence, then you are on the wrong side of history this very moment. It's time, it's really, really, really time to stand for peace and justice for all and support a ceasefire and move towards divestment from this criminal apartheid regime that has manipulated its way to power. Israel will fall. Please, no one should be silent while our government sends another $20 billion in arms that will blow more children to bits and pieces. Please put the ceasefire resolution on the agenda now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Council. My name is Charlie. I was raised here, grew up out in Chicago Park, lived in Grass Valley. I live in Nevada City now. I'm a farmer here in town, work for a local farm. A lot of that beautiful bounty that we see, me and quite a few other people have at least a small part in it, and just take a moment to acknowledge how great our food is. I haven't been here for a myriad of reasons, but I think tonight I just wanted to speak about the community discussion that happened a couple weeks ago, which I feel like most people felt that it was useless is the wrong word, but it didn't seem to get us anywhere and actually felt like I had been there before. It felt like something from 10 months ago. Truly felt like it was a waste of my time. I think there was only one exception, actually, and I would like to name that, and it was Gary, Mr. Mayor. You read an accountability statement that I appreciated, heard, and felt like it came from someone who had reflected on their actions, and I just want to give you some flowers for that. I think it is extremely difficult to be vulnerable and to be humbled. And yeah, wow, what not something I expected, so I'll give you that. And would like to, and also follow that apologies only matter with changed behavior. So I love to see the engagement. I love to see the respect that's happening both ways. I'd like that for that to continue. And always a free Palestine feels so, it feels like such a easy ask, as difficult as it may seem. Why we struggle with naming, evil when we see it, because it's easier to not name it, because it's easier to get along, to stay along. I have no interest in nice city politics. I think that it is an evil virus of liberalism to make sure that, well, why can't we all get along? And I believe that as well with the consensus. We don't need a consensus, but our individuals have shown up here for months. Clearly, this stands, this remains. We should at least put a ceasefire resolution on the agenda.
Thank you.
Hi, I happen to be here for another reason, but my name is John Palmer, resident of Nevada City, right down the street, and I've lived here for 27 years. I was part of the process a couple weeks ago on the Zoom call. I felt that it was a great attempt by the city council and the city to move this conversation forward and out of the council chambers. I think the issue at hand here is there's no question there's atrocity going on in that part of the world. There's atrocity going on in the Sudan that we're not addressing. There's atrocity going on in the Ukraine that we're not addressing. And what happens on a local level is I feel like we can address these issues as a community, but whether the council chamber is the place to what I see as kind of bullying and sabotaging the council meeting to get a particular vote going forward is unfortunate. And I would hope that there is another process and another way to do that within the city confines to do this. But I haven't been privy to the months of this that have gone on, but I've seen, the comments that came forth tonight, and I hope that a process can come forward. My fear is if the council starts to weigh in on international issues, everybody's going to be coming up here with international issues to deal with. And the role, in my opinion, of city council is to move the city forward in the confines of the city, what we need as a city to operate, to function, to go forward. So my opinion is, thank you for what you're doing. This is a hard process to go through. I understand this, and I support the council moving forward in any way that makes it more efficient to have city council meetings. And thank you.
Thank you, John.
Good evening. My name is Tom Durkin. I am the creative director of the Sierra Ridge No Place to Go project, and I share the concerns of the people speaking before me, but I want to bring it to something you can do something about. Nevada County has brought on a tiny homes on wheels ordinance, and we're going to ask them to include RVs and trailers as tiny homes, because that's where people live. It's affordable housing. And that may come to you, your city, it doesn't affect you right now, but at some point, you have people living in trailers and RVs right now in town, and they're living in the shadows. Let's make them legal, increase the actual available housing stock, because there are RVs and trailers out there that are livable, and people shouldn't be in the streets if they could be living someplace safe. So that's all I want to say on that, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, folks. I just want to draw your attention to a document that I read a few months ago. It was from Code Pink, and it was like a guide to getting city council resolutions passed. And there were some recommendations on how to apply leverage to city councils. And if you're to go read that, I think you would be grateful to all of us for skipping some of those suggestions. So, Free Palestine.
Thank you.
You know what I'm going to say, ceasefire now, free Palestine and the occupation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'll also say after the Supreme Court ruling of the Grants Pass decision, I think hopefully we'll all agree it's within our best interests to not criminalize homelessness. It's a bad thing. I think you can all see that and hopefully foresee that. The solution is affordable housing and all kinds of other things. Not arresting people, not sweeping encampments, not forcing people to go somewhere else, which doesn't actually solve the issue. And yeah, just make sure that in the future, if you see a homeless person out there, that the first solution is not to go call the cops on them, because that's not going to solve anything. Free Palestine.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, thank you for your comment. We will move forward to the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items, but Councilmember CC
Recusal.
It had a recusal on item 5. So before we take action on the consent calendar, we will hear any public comment on consent calendar items only. Do we have any public comment on consent items? Seeing none, we have a recusal, so should we pull 5 separately? Yes, we will pull item 5 separately. It's only 4 of us will be voting on that. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item 5.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Fernandez, second by Vice Mayor Klein. We will now take item 5, consideration of the special regret.
If we could vote on the first one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, we have to vote. Roll call, please.
So it would be Councilmember Fleming
Yes.
and Councilmember Fernandez.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Klein.
Yes.
Mayor Peterson.
And this first one.
Oh, and
Yes.
Councilmember.
And now.
Yes. And then we'll now take a vote on item 5, which Councilmember CC has requested a recusal for. So looking for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Right. Roll call, please.
Okay, now Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Klein.
Yes.
Mayor Peterson.
Yes. Consent agenda is moved. Done. So next up, item 8, public hearing. Conduct a public hearing in consideration of ordinance 2024-04, an ordinance of the City Council, State of California, amending Chapter 8.04 of the Nevada City Municipal Code relating to nuisances.
Yes, awesome. I get paid by the word, so. So this is part of our continuing effort to modernize our municipal code. You'll see another half dozen updates throughout this fiscal year. In this case, Chapter 8.04 of the Nevada City Municipal Code addresses nuisances within the city. The base ordinance was adopted with our first municipal code in 1956. It's had multiple amendments to sections over time. However, the basic components of it were put in typeset, and they could only do 26 things because that's how many letters are on the alphabet. So if you read our old ordinances A through Z, most of those items are addressed in other portions of the code now because they fall under other items besides true nuisances on or upon property. An example would be, it says animals running at large either on public or private property except dogs which are licensed by the city. So dogs can run amok on public property apparently, but cats can't be on your private property is what, that would say. So, we're trying to, modernize the code, so to speak. The current code also has some deficiencies that require some updates to maintain the appeal or other rights of folks that might end up being, the subject of enforcement. So that's outlined as well in here. So, the ordinance breaks out a whole bunch of things, definitions, things like that, but it's really, there's 3 parts to it: define public nuisances, develop regulations to promote maintenance of property, and to establish administrative procedures. The second two things are pretty easy to do. Regulations come from the ordinance, it's how we do it, and then the administrative procedures are how we enforce those things. The first part is, you can take any boilerplate ordinance from any city and apply it somewhere, but maybe not everything exactly fits in every community. There's really two ways that these ordinances come about. It's either because you're in a city of blight and you're trying to address something that is already there. I don't believe we're in that case. Not that there isn't something that is out there that we would like to clean up, but we're in the other category, which is we don't want it to get to that point, as other cities have maybe got to. One of the most common complaints we receive about nuisances in general is things that are visible from the street. So whether somebody's, concerns are there or not, or whether they meet our code today or not, different story. But the part of it is that what we define as nuisances have to be equitable. So for example, if item X is in somebody's front yard, and in that neighborhood, people think it's beautiful and they like their neighbor and they like that thing. We equally would have to accept in another neighborhood where the same item X is viewed as ugly and not liked, universally not liked by that neighborhood. It's always that balance of what is allowed versus what's not, what's considered a nuisance versus what's not. Much of the list of nuisances in here are either generally accepted, like that graffiti should be removed when visible from, a city street. I think that there's not much other than consensus that we shouldn't have graffiti on our buildings, public or private, or are otherwise regulated. So you'll notice in here that it identifies nuisances relative to our vegetation management defensible space ordinance. So anything that's already in there is also a nuisance in here. So, but with that, I wanted to highlight some of the items in the ordinance before you tonight that people might perceive as a creep into overregulation. And I'm certainly not interested in overregulating, but given what the community's expectations are, the ability for us to engage people when the conditions on their property are outside of those general consensus items. So, and I would imagine you have some public comment on these items tonight. So, as we go down the list, I'll just put them in number 7. This comes from 8.04.030A, and they're numbered under there. Number 7 is clotheslines in all exteriors and outdoor yard areas were visible from the public right of way. So people have said, I want to have my clotheslines out there. Playground equipment, it says what that is: swings, slides, seesaws, jungle gyms, teeter-totters, carousels. Carousels would be interesting. Visible from the right of way. Furniture that is for outdoor seating, tables, chairs, umbrellas in front yards visible from the right of way. So all three of those, or those two, playground equipment and furniture, front yards, side yards visible from the right of way. In front yards, both of those things can become, playground and clotheslines can be attractive nuisances, especially if people don't have fencing. But furniture probably less so. So usually a chair is not an attractive nuisance. Number 11 is decorative lighting of any kind visible from the public right of way. And I won't read the whole rest of it because that part we're going to recommend that be removed from first reading this evening if you decide to move forward. While that language does exist in other municipal codes, we don't have a history of regulating holiday lighting on residential properties. And the holiday lighting that we do regulate, especially in the historic district, is going to be taken up as part of our lighting ordinance revision, part of the Dark Skies Initiative with the Planning Commission, so that if there is any need for addressing holiday lighting on residential or other private property, that would be the place that would be addressed. So again, we'd recommend that come off this evening. And then item 21, a ways down, is garbage cans, yard waste containers, recycling containers that are kept, placed, or stored in the public right of way in front or side yards and visible from the right-of-way and/or adjacent property, except that such containers may be placed in the right-of-way and removed within 24 hours of scheduled collection time. I know that there's been some public comment on that. I would also say that garbage cans visible from the right-of-way are amongst the most common complaints that we get. Most of them are ones where they were on vacation and they didn't pull it back. So, our code officer will go pull it back from them. Or Waste Management didn't pick up that day because it was snowing, and so it sat out for a couple more days. And so those are not the kind of things that we're looking to enforce, but the accessibility, visibility of a garbage can that has flies and rats is more the kind of thing that would be of concern.
So just for clarity, you're saying can't see trash cans from the road?
What's that? Correct. That's what this would have.
Good Lord, okay. Keep going, sorry.
Yeah.
Can we just move it along?
Yeah, I was asking for clarity, thank you.
So those are the, you may have more from public comments, but those are the ones that I've heard on the, again, this is based on model codes from other jurisdictions. You'll find this similar language, not all of it exactly the same, but whether it's Colfax or Grass Valley or Truckee or Placerville or Auburn, you'll find the pieces and parts of these things, certainly not all in exactly the same way. So again, it's trying to establish like I said, the second and third parts are relatively easy. That's just how we deal with people and trying to get them to achieve voluntary compliance largely for these things. It's the first part that needs to be, specific and detailed to the needs of our community, which is what those definitions of nuisances are. And that's why I call those ones out individually, because we know that there might be concerns with those. And I will leave it there. Certainly, it's a public hearing. We recommend you take that public input, hold first reading with any changes that you might like to make, waive reading of the ordinance in its entirety, read by title only, and schedule for the second reading, which will come up on August 28th at our next meeting.
Okay. Let's go ahead and open this up to public comment.
It seems like the microphones maybe aren't on. It's really difficult to hear from there.
Go ahead.
Oh, that's all I wanted to
Okay. Thank you.
While I was walking to City Council, which mind you is not a very far walk from my house, I counted the number of trash cans that I saw from the road, and it was 20 different places, not 20 individual trash cans. Most of these had 2 or 3 of them, including the Veterans Hall, which had trash cans visible from the public right-of-way. And I didn't think that was a nuisance. It didn't detract from my walk down here, and it certainly didn't detract from the character of the city. So I'm confused on why that would be included, especially because for a lot of people, they don't have a place to put their trash cans that isn't visible from the street. If you don't have a garage, or even if you do have a garage, but there's things in your garage, or if we're supposed to build high-density housing, there's not going to be a place to go put your trash can. And then on the subject of decorative lights, presuming that since you all live here, you know how big of an event Halloween is around here. Geez, we closed the streets for it. I think there'd be a lot of very unhappy people if you said that decorative lighting wasn't allowed during the month of October. And I think it would be completely unfeasible to even try to enforce that, because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of places that put up decorative lights for Halloween. That's just what I've got to say, is that the list of public nuisances seems extensive and, I'll be honest, kind of absurd, because these aren't really public nuisances. They are a few NIMBYs don't like the look of something, and so they are complaining about it.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Dan. I live here in town. Just going to echo some of those comments. I wrote in, I don't know if anybody got the comments about Halloween,
but
Yeah.
come on, it's Halloween.
Yeah, I know.
We know the situation. Thank you for mentioning that you're considering pulling that out. I think that makes sense. As the garbage cans, they're all over the place. My neighbor doesn't even have a backyard, so maybe consider some alternatives for that as well. I think the spirit of what you're trying to do is to provide a mechanism for enforcement for people who are really problematic. My concern is that if there was a grumpy neighbor syndrome, that it could, come into sort of like a neighborly war. So that's where I don't want this to be selective enforcement based on somebody's personal grievance is where I'm going with that. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dan.
I feel like all of these kind of seem like over-regulation to me. Not allowing people to have a clothesline visible is wild. Not everyone has a dryer. It seems just really wild to me to tell people how they can live and how they can use their yard to punish them if not. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Virginia City, but it kind of feels like a Western town, where you could just kick it and it would all fall back. No one really people live there, but not a lot of people live there. Most of the labor force lives in Reno and commutes. And that is my worst nightmare for this town. And I personally like going through a town where I can tell that people live there. And it's not just a Disneyland movie set, but actual human beings drying their clothes, sitting in their chair in their yard. That to me is a green flag when I go through a town. One of my favorite houses in town was actually the house that burnt down, that had definitely a hoarding situation, but also had pots on the steps and all these things that I'm sure are against the ordinances. That was the most charming house with the most character, and the rest are very obviously bread and breakfasts to me. They all look like bread and breakfast. So I really would urge you to use this opportunity to, take a big step back on over-regulating how people live in their downtown homes, and eliminating a lot of these as you go would be my vote, because none of those seem very fair to me, and they seem a bit blind to class and ability, and a couple other things, but that's it. Thank you so much for hearing me.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Lou Brigham. I'm a property owner on Jordan Street. Thank you, everyone. And I just wanted to say that I hope that this creates a forum also for us to come up with some ideas on ways to improve things for the city. Personally, I'd love to see a garbage can at the end of Pine Street by the Tribulation Trail, because I think it's really a nuisance to have to pick up all the garbage and the dog poop and stuff that accumulates in that area. For 2 years, there was a garbage can there for years, and then for a couple of years, I put my own garbage can there when the city left, and I did it for 2 years up until COVID, and it got a little scary, and there got some kind of crazy stuff put in there. And so I'd love to see that garbage can put back. So that's I think that there's some really good things that can come from setting up, figuring out what are nuisances, but I think other things like coming down Pine Street by Clark that there's more and more people crossing the street there, and so I know it might be difficult to put in a stop sign, but maybe we can get that sign up that shows how fast cars are going as they jam down there, and maybe we can paint the safety walk there, the crosswalk, or put up a sign letting people know that that is a crosswalk that a lot of people go over. And then I think kind of an overall comment I want to make to the whole idea of regulating nuisances is to have us all think about we're all annoying.
Hear, hear.
And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Thank you.
Best comment ever.
I did have a question for Mary Lou. Mary Lou, you said at the end of Pine Street is where your trash can was?
It's at the end of the Pine Street Bridge.
Right.
On that corner.
Where the Tribulation
yeah,
Trail
it's
comes out onto Pine Street. I wanted to make that clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Durkin.
I just want to revisit what I said earlier about trailers and RVs. I would urge you not to let aesthetics get in the way of people being housed. What looks worse, people in the streets or a trailer in somebody's backyard? We'll speak about encampments later, but there's a trash problem in encampments. Maybe if you gave them trash cans, it wouldn't be such a problem. Because when we're at Pioneer Park in Sierra Ridge, we leave the place clean and the people want that place to be clean. So that's just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to encourage you to pump the brakes on this. I think there's a lot of interpretation and discretion in this really broad thing, and like people said, it can happen to you too. Once the obvious nuisances are taken care of, like who's going to stop this from becoming a nightmare homeowners association kind of thing that's coming for you next?
Thank you.
I would just urge you to tread lightly when it comes to the subject of nuisances. One person's nuisance might be another person's sense of wonder. I don't know, but that's
true.
You don't want to create Lake Wildwood here.
Thank you. Okay, let's bring it back. I'd like to move through this sort of in an orderly fashion with each of the council members. If you've taken up a comment, we can make recommendations to changes, take up specifics, or move in general to discuss this. So give each of us the time we need, and I'm happy to start. Would you like to start?
I'm sorry, can you say more about what you mean move
Yeah,
in
can you
general
talk louder,
to
too?
discuss this?
So we can get down into the details and talk about very specific things. I have a few of those myself. But there is also the general notion of why we have a nuisance policy and what that accomplishes. So that's what I mean by that. Is that helpful?
Sure.
I have a clarification question. Item number 35 is tarps on graded hillsides. I'm not sure what that means.
That means putting a tarp on a hillside.
On a graded hillside. Well, here's my question. So the median between the sidewalk on the street on Gethsemane and Cross Street is overgrown with St. John's wort, and you can't get rid of it without covering it with a tarp for a couple of weeks to kill it and then digging it up. I'm not sure whether or not that is, pardon the pun, covered. Is it?
So that's where the exceptions come into those for or otherwise permitted or allowed. So the intention of that one is you shouldn't be using tarps as an erosion control measure or something to do something else, because the inevitable outcome of that is you sheet flow the water off of your property to where it's not supposed to be. So that's what the intention of that is, much like it says, the analogous one is you can't have it on your roofs either, except for when it's raining because you have a leak. Obviously, that's what tarps go on roofs for, but if it's summertime, fix the leak and then you don't have the issue.
Okay, good. Then I have objections to particular ones, but
Please
we
go
can do
forth.
that separately.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, number 9 is playground equipment that is visible from an adjoining property. If I have a kid and I want a swing set for my kid, I don't care if my neighbor doesn't like seeing it. It's in my backyard, it's my kid, I want to have a swing set. I don't think that is a reasonable nuisance. Number 10, lawn furniture, which can't be on the lawn. Now, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. And number 10, decorative lighting on buildings can only be up between Thanksgiving and February 28th. I put mine up October 1st. It's orange lights. It's for Halloween. So those three, I can't support in any way.
Thank you, Councilmember. Vice Mayor, would you like to go?
Yeah, I'm thinking of my own situation where I've got a carport. I stow my trash cans in there. You know, as soon as I get home from work on Tuesday, I bring my trash cans in like a good boy. Now I'm finding out people can see them from the road, and I'm a nuisance. This whole time I've been a nuisance.
Not for that reason.
Thank you, Sean.
No other reasons, perhaps. But
It's because you call yourself a boy.
I'm a sweet little boy.
it's the persona.
I'm just being a nuisance to Daniela. That seems, in a town this small with so many small lots, it's like there are plenty of lots where people do not have a place to put their trash cans, that they can't be seen from the road. They're not in the road's face, so to speak. They're put back, but we're walking down our streets, we can often see our neighbors' trash cans, and I'm not sure who's offended by that. If the language could be more specific to say if the trash can is attracting vermin and so forth, I can see that being a nuisance, but just the existence of a trash can feels inoffensive to me. We all know we have them. Clotheslines were brought up. I'm not sure what's unappealing about a clothesline. That isn't also unappealing about, are people still allowed to cool pies on a windowsill? Or is there a fear that will attract cartoon bears?
Blackbirds.
I laughed.
Look at that.
George Clooney.
Even the front yard, the idea of someone having like a small slide for their kid to play on in the front yard, it's like, who is upset by this? I mean, I believe you that there are people who are making these phone calls, but give me their names. This feels way too broad for a city as specific as ours is. And I think, I feel like we're all going to have changes we'd like made, and it just feels like this isn't fully cooked yet.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Councilmember Fleming.
Yeah, so, you've made some differences in what we're going to sort of focus on. I'd like to just take a step back and look at, one of the things that I wonder is if we, sorry, I'm way down here. We've had some neighbors, some neighborhoods and some houses that have been awful. There's just been junk all over the place. They're just eyesores. I think collectively, most people would agree that they're, could be construed as a nuisance. Does this help get, what happens in a process like that? Because we've had those situations and we've had these things on the books. So somebody has a house that's just, definitely a nuisance. What is the, enforcement process, and what have we been doing in the past, and how will this change that?
This will allow us to address many more of the concerns that people have that are specific to that. The things where the majority of the community would walk by that house and go, that's not great, right? And we should find a way to get them help or get that fixed. If you read our current ordinance in those A through Z items, there's not a lot of those, right? Whereas this has more of those. I'm hearing that maybe it's got more than is needed, and we can certainly, adjust. But yes, this will help us with the common items that we see. Everything from, what someone would classically call a hoarder house, right, is usually the inside of the house, but the outside of the house maybe too. And there's many characteristics of that outside that are addressed here that then we could, in good consciousness, say, that's not legal. So let's find you a way to, get into voluntary compliance, as opposed to today, I could say, that's not desired. It's not necessarily illegal. So that's what we're going for, I hope, is what the council would support, is to address those items that would broadly encompass those things that are true nuisances within our community. And so if we can enumerate those or take from what's here, that's great. If, you have other options if you don't want to do that as well.
So I'm in a HOA situation right now. We had a meeting 2 days ago, and some of the people wanted to regulate, it just got a little ridiculous, and it's very subjective, and it could be selective enforcement and subjective. So I think there's a big fear. We've heard it here. We voiced it on the council as well. I appreciate the intent of what the city manager is trying to accomplish, and I think there are some need for, having a much more robust nuisance ordinance, but it's a slippery slope. And, I think that we could all say that there's some egregious nuisances that we could all define, but you know, just because you don't like to see my underwear, you know, hanging out in, you know, the thing. I mean, I can understand how that could bother some people, but maybe not others. Like Adam doesn't mind that. So, you know, I mean, so I don't know how we do this without getting into a very slippery slope and a subjective analysis of what is a nuisance. I think we can generalize, and I think that this might need to be a little bit more specific in some of these things as far as, you know, the things that have been talked about here. I mean, some of the things we just can't, you know, can't add to this ordinance or it will be a mess. And, you know, I'm pissed at my neighbor, so I'm going to call him on every little thing that he does. You know, his garbage cans are out. We were told we couldn't keep our garbage cans out in the HOA, and then it turns out, no, the CCNRs don't say that. We were told we couldn't keep our, you know, cars in the driveway, but, you know, we're allowed to. But it has to be on gravel if it's off the driveway. Anyway, I digress, of course, but I think that we can adjust this a little bit and make it a little bit more effective in the goals that we're trying to accomplish, I believe.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Fernandez.
I've heard the term slippery slope in this room in the last 4 years more times than I care to acknowledge. This is one of the few times I agree with it. I think this goes beyond slippery slope. I think it's far overreaching and overregulating. I understand I understand the objective. I'm nervous. I don't want to support an ordinance that is created to address extreme cases. I think trash cans, clotheslines, furniture, playgrounds. I think, you know, Olivia brought up a great point. This is also a class issue in some of those instances. It's a culture issue. I don't want to live in a place where everyone has to do everything in secrecy in the privacy of their own home. I have 2 beautiful, well-made wooden chairs in my front garden, and I love sitting there having my coffee in the morning and watching the neighborhood go by. I know my neighbors because of those chairs.
You're of the neighborhood.
What's that?
You're of the neighborhood.
That's right. And so, you know, and the same for a playground. I love seeing kids play. Who's offended by seeing kids play? Goodness gracious. Yeah, so just some of these things I think are really overreaching, and I would like us to sort of step back and maybe think about other ways we can address what are considered true nuisances. And I also it's everything subjective. I think even the true nuisance is subjective. I'm nervous to tell people how to live and how to keep their property. It needs to be safe, for sure. It needs to be fire safe and safe for others. But yeah, yeah, that's it.
Thank you. I'm reminded of an organization I once worked with that was getting ready to impose a draconian dress code on 600 employees. And they asked me what I thought about it. I said, why are you doing this? And they kept saying, well, we need it. Well, why do you need it? When you get down to the root cause, there were 2 people that rode their bicycles to work every day and didn't change out of their spandex. And because of that, they were about ready to impose a dress code on 600 people. So this is not exactly where we are. However, I'm often, as I like to remind myself and others, the purpose of local government is to provide for public health and safety. So I personally would like to see this pared back to where it focuses on the key issues. Clearly, this was an ordinance developed in another city, which I understand, and I understand why we would do that because it is about best practices. But you know, every city needs to have its own unique characteristics addressed, and I think certainly. You know, I actually know what city this was written for, and all the houses look the same, and everybody has the same driveways, and everybody has the same yards, and you can do everything the same way. We're very far from that. I mean, I have my trash cans are in the front yard because I would have to drag them 50 feet down a hill, but I do have them screened. so that they're not obvious from the street. So I'm, and I also, though, if you go back and look at the other code, we have to get real about our codes becoming modern to protect the city. This does have a really robust appeal process, which our former one did not. The former nuisance one, even though it's much lighter than it should have been, is archaic. So we have a responsibility to protect our city, and that means through legalities. I get it. I've worked with my over experience where neighbors like to use these against other neighbors if they don't like you, the grumpy neighbor thing. So I'm going to recommend that we send this back and that we not advance it. I'm hearing that from 3 of you. I'm sure I have the other one, to look at these things and maybe refine it more carefully for our specific needs. That's kind of where I am with it.
So my recommendation would be, one, that we do it at a meeting when Dean's here, so.
We can hold him accountable.
Because he wrote it, no, just kidding. No, he didn't. But the option would be for you to continue the public hearing to a date certain, which would be August 28th. That means we don't have to renotice it, but we would bring it back to the next meeting, and with the revisions that you spoke about tonight, and you could consider it again with some specificity and granularity to Nevada City.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds great.
And that requires a motion, yeah.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, we better do a roll call on this one. Roll call on this one. Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Here? Oh, yeah, so, yes.
Councilmember Cece?
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Klein?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes. Thank you for that. It is an important document that we do need to take up, but it needs to be done right. So thank you for that.
And thank you for the public input, too,
Yes,
both
very
in the
much.
room and written.
Very much. All right, so number 9, consideration of a special event request for the 2024 Roman Angels event at the Bodhi Hive Collective, Nevada City Tech Center, September 6th through 8th, 2024. Take it away.
I'm back again. Hi, Jade. Welcome. So on July 23rd, we received an application for the 2024 Roman Angels Car Show event. This is the second year they'll be with us, having moved from the fairgrounds where they had been for several decades.
Yes.
The event's on September 7th, 2024, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., set up on the 6th and break down on the 8th. The Bodhi Hive has an approved special event on that same weekend. They have requested to forego that event. In lieu have the Roman Angels car event. It's primarily conducted on private property. In fact, the event itself is entirely on private property, but they propose to use the right-of-way for some signage directing traffic. They've asked for the use of our electronic sign, and provided that it's available in the staff report, I requested that you give me permission to waive the fee for that sign, primarily because the police chief has requested it because of the volume of traffic. So we would probably put it out there anyway. We might as well be able to say what the event is instead of just saying event. With that, Jeanette's not here tonight, the co-chair of the event, but Jade is, and she'll share with us what's different this year, what's new, and what's cool with the Roman Angels.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I stood up here a little too soon.
No, you're great.
My name is Jade. I'm a part of the Roman Angels and part owner of Gold Country Classic Cars. Last year, we hosted the event for the first time at our facility at the Bodhi Hive. We think it went really well for an event of this size. I think largely in part to the organization themselves, having done this so many times before. Everyone pretty much knows their place and knows their duty. And so I learned a lot, and that was really great. But we did learn what was a little bit of a pain point and tried to address that this year. So some of those changes are, we've added additional restrooms, both inside and out, that are accessible to the public. Additional support of 2 shuttles that will run from the gate check area down Zion Street, picking up people that have further parking that need additional assistance. We've also added more relaxing areas with a lawn area outside of the facility itself, some of the improvements at the Bodhi Hive. I know some people said that they didn't really have a place to rest, so we're inviting people to bring their chairs and picnic on the lawn and enjoy the music and food and things like that. Chairs on the lawn. We've also, Bodhi Hive has also installed some shade sails over the main street area where most of the vendors and food vendors are. That just adds another layer of protection and to me, it creates a much more inviting space for events and people to enjoy. We have a pending approval from Seven Hills for some additional overflow parking that would allow for a gate access point right to, again, be picked up and brought to the gate check. I think that is approximately 60 or more additional spaces. And I think that's really what we learned. I don't know, Sean, if you had any other concerns or things that were brought forth or feedback from last year.
I didn't specifically, but I appreciate the council should know that we did a small debrief after last year's. They tried to address as much as they could in their application. We went back and forth with both Jeanette and Jade on a number of things, and they addressed everything that they practically could. The only thing we couldn't address was they requested that law enforcement do traffic control at intersections, and we just simply don't have the capacity to do that. But we will work with them on the signage at the various intersections as well as the electronic board. But they've been very receptive to trying to adjust, and I anticipate we'll have some issues this year, and we'll continue to adjust as we go to make it a good, long-lasting event.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jade. Public comment? For this item for public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Start down here with you, Doug.
I thought it was a great event last year. I'm just really excited that we can attract these kind of events to the Tech Center, Bodhi Hive. Can I ask the chief but his recollection, you were there, you talked to your people on your team. Were there any issues or anything that from last year that you recall?
Hopefully the mics will pick me up. Actually, what I would say from what I recall from last year, it was surprisingly light impact for our community. I was worried with the number of cars and the number of people that were going to come to the event in the middle of the day. We had very little impact on, when it was first kicking off, there was heavier traffic, of course, to bring in hundreds of people to the event, but it was very smooth flowing. And I would say too that they were excellent to work with. They reached out to us beforehand, during, and after to see if there was anything or any conflict. I was anticipating more of an impact than what we received. So I think every year is going to probably get smoother, and I was very happy with what we had last year.
Thanks, Chief. That's all I needed to hear.
Okay. Councilmember?
Jade, thank you so much. I appreciate you preemptively addressing the concerns, and I see no reason to push this forward, not to push this forward, excuse me.
Thank you. Councilmember Cece.
It was a fun event, and it brought folks to Seven Hills, so I'm all for it.
Sounds great.
Great. The only thing I noticed, and it sounds like you're working on it, is the choke point of the entry. I talked to a number of people who just turned around and left. The line of traffic was out the door, and fortunately, they haven't figured out how you park in the neighborhoods and walk over there yet. Some of us know how to do that, but I hope the shuttles will deal with that, because that was the only real concern I had. A lot of cool cars, love cool cars. Happy I'm looking for a motion to approve.
I so move.
I'll second that.
Approval by Councilmember Cece, second by Councilmember Fleming. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right. Thank you, Jade. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jade.
And we'd like to just invite everybody in the public to come too.
More cool cars.
Would you like to remind folks of the date?
September 7th, it's a Saturday, 9 to 4, show cars. Last year we had almost 300 show cars.
Great. September 7th, 9 to 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Cars. All right. So probably the main event. Consideration of a presentation on wildfire risk abatement activities in relation to homeless encampments. And we have the dynamic duo of Chief Foss and Evan McLenithan to present this. Give us this presentation.
I hate to put a wrench in this. Could we get a bio break? Just a couple
Again,
minutes,
all you have to do
please?
is ask. 5 minutes, we'll be back.
Sure, guys.
a minute ago.
Just set it up and write it down. We are ready to go.
Are we good? Do we call it or just jump in? Okay. Mayor, members of council, while we're here today, I think Lou brought up some great questions at our last meeting, 4 great questions. I have them all written down here, so I make sure that I'll hit each one of them as we're discussing this. But I think we all know why we're here, is this has been a major topic of conversation since it's been gone through the Supreme Court, and it's affected not just us, but pretty much every city and municipality, and not just our state, but all the neighboring states as well. So I'll give a very brief background on that, and if you have any questions for follow-up, then of course I'll answer those. But basically what happened with that is there was Martin versus Boise, and what happened with that is the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said, hey, it is cruel and unusual punishment to punish somebody for being unhoused. So if they're sleeping somewhere and they have nowhere to go, then it is cruel and unusual punishment to actually convict them or charge them with a crime. That was upheld and challenged through a separate case, which is City of Grants Pass versus Johnson. And I'm trying not to get into the weeds too much on this. And then they appealed that all the way up to the Supreme Court. And here's the gist of it, if I can really make it simple, is the Supreme Court said punishment does not happen when you implement laws. So in other words, we have a no smoking law in downtown, right? The law is not punishment. That is a regulation by you. Now, what we deem, I think we'd all agree that it's okay to have that law, but if we're getting a year in prison for your first offense, well, that's cruel and unusual punishment. You don't get a year in prison for smoking one time, right? But you can have that ordinance because of how it affects the community, just like we were talking about on the nuisance things. You can regulate and say, hey, we don't like this, but the punishment is different than the regulation, if that makes sense, if you're following on that. So there's a lot of talk of what the Supreme Court did and didn't do. They didn't make homelessness necessarily illegal or legal. They just said that this is something that can be regulated differently by different communities, but the punishment cannot be extreme, if you're following on that. So after that occurred, and they overturned that ruling, then an ordinance that we've always had in effect that did not become out of effect, but we weren't really enforcing in any way, shape, or form while Martin versus Boise was in effect, because they had said you cannot regulate those ordinances, you cannot enforce those ordinances. Those are now back in effect. And I will go over that ordinance in a minute. It's one of your specific questions. One of the comments you did say too is the governor now has given an order. How does that affect us? I will say this, it affects us not at all. So the governor cannot give us an order there's no state law that says it's illegal to be unhoused or to sleep on sidewalks or anything else. That is a ordinance, not a state law. So those are regulated by the city council in their municipalities, if you follow me. The governor can order state departments, such as CHP, which he is doing, to enforce different state ordinances, but that doesn't affect us, right? So when he issues this, it has no effect or bearing on us whatsoever. And you'll see that in his comments, because he's now saying, do it or else. And people are like, well, what are the else? Well, I'll withhold your funding. Well, it's not an issue for us here. So that now brings us, for the groundwork, to what your questions are, and I'll go over those in order. What is the ordinance? So we have an ordinance that is covered under 9.14 of the municipal ordinance here. And I'm not going to read it verbatim because it's 3 pages long, but the gist of it is you cannot sleep on any public property. Let me get to it here, I'm sorry. I highlighted it, but with the wrong color highlighter, I think. You cannot sleep on any public or private property without permission from law enforcement or the city council. So basically, you cannot lay, I have a hope here, I should ask him. I brought too many papers.
You're looking for the definition of camp?
I don't know what I'm looking for. I'm looking well, I'll get back to that. You find the thing for me, and then I'll jump to the punishment. Because the punishment is the big part, is what is it, what is the punishment for the offenses? So, thank you so much. I got it printed out, but I'm drawing a blank on finding it. So the punishment is your first offense. If we do decide to give you a ticket on your first offense, it's a $100 fine. That is an infraction. So how does that work? What does that mean? That never turns into a warrant. So if you get a violation for the camping ordinance, then you're going to get a $100 fine, which eventually can go to collections, right? Your second offense with inside of 12 months will be a $200 fine. Your third offense inside of 12 months will be a $500 fine. And your fourth and every subsequent offense after that is a misdemeanor, and you can be arrested on that. Now, when we're talking about this, there's always discretion. Nobody that I've ever seen has been giving an offense or a ticket or a citation, and I don't intend to do that on their first offense, their second offense, their third offense. Probably when it comes to the fourth or fifth offense, we might be talking about citations. And I'll even get to that a little bit more when we would specifically be doing that. Just run the definition for me. Thank you, Sean. I still don't see it here to read it verbatim. So public property means any property open to public use, includes city properties, municipal parking lots, off-street parking facilities, open to the public or public ways. So they cannot sleep, lay, or camp in any of those sections. And camping is defined here more, but we all know what camping is, right? So what does this mean? And how does the city of Nevada City and our police department, how do we enforce this and how do we act upon it? Now, one of the beautiful things about our community is we are very, very small. We know almost everybody in our community, right? Especially those that are the most vulnerable and that are unhoused. We work with them on almost a daily basis and explain very specifically on, hey, here's what we need, here's what you have to follow, here's what the rules and the guidelines are. Why is that? Many people choose to live how they want to live. And I'm a big fan of that. They should choose to live how they want to live until it impacts your safety and your freedoms, right? And we're going to get into this for fire. This is a big threat for fire, and we'll talk about why. But if you have the unhoused, you have warming fires in the winter, you have cooking fires in the summer, and fire, anything for us outside is a huge danger. So we have to be very cognizant of that. One thing that we don't talk about very much, though, that is we see a lot, especially our poor public works employees, is they have to use the bathroom. And if you're near our water source, or if you're in our town, many times they're going to be using it in places that can impact us directly and quickly. And some of the other things, and it's talked about in the definition here, if we don't have these ordinances that we are enforcing, where are people going to set up camp? I'll tell you where I'd set up camp, on the trails, because it's beautiful, it's nice, it's peaceful, it's already flat land, and you're going to have people setting up there. So if we don't have some type of ordinance that enforces this, then we have no authority or reason to move people from those locations, right? So that's the section is 9.14, and then it's covered under several subsections of that. How much warning do people get? It is a minimum of 72 hours, okay? So if we do find a campsite that's an established campsite, then code enforcement, Amanda goes through with her, with a form and a stake, and we laminate it, we print it out, we give the date that we came by, we photograph it, and the date that they are required to have all their property gone. One thing we try really, really hard to do, and that's all that's required. You stake it in front of the tent, wherever you see it, or the campsite, and you move along. We always try to go the extra mile. And almost always, again, in our community, we know almost all of our unhoused personally. And we find them and we say, hey, listen, we're going to serve you this paperwork. It's 72 hours, but realistically, we're going to give you 5 days or even longer if you need it, or we'll even move your stuff if you need it. But you have to move from this location. You cannot be here, and here's why. And we're going to give them very specific time of when they're going to move. It's a minimum of 72 hours. Realistically, it's more like 5 days, unless it's something that's more of an emergency or a detriment to our community. But it is a minimum of 72 hours. What happens to their stuff? Per our policy, another one of my forms here somewhere. Okay, per our policy 800.6.5, all of our property, there's a little caveat to this, that we collect must be maintained for 90 days in our facility. During that time, we have to, under policy, attempt to contact the owner of that property and return it to them. If we can't, then we have to keep it for a minimum of 90 days before we can destroy it. Most of the time, it's going to be kept with us probably closer to 6 months, because what we tend to do is collect a large amount. Once it gets to be a big pile that's over 90 days, then we take it all and it's disposed of. The We do not collect everything at that campsite and bring it back here. We'll go over some of the photos. I will say the vast majority of the property is heavily soiled or it has no value, deemable value. We do document that as best as possible. So we come through with a body camera, we take pictures as Evan's gonna show you of the campsites, and we show very clearly like, hey, this is property that has no value whatsoever and can be destroyed. Much of it too is just heavily soiled, and we're not gonna be keeping it for that reason. Does that mean it's not valuable to anybody? No, it does not. And they are able to file a claim with us. And although it hasn't happened, even though I've encouraged people to do so, if somebody comes in and we throw away a mattress that's heavily soiled, they would file a claim. I cannot tell you which way that claim would go, but I can tell you we have bought bedding. I have personally bought bedding for people that need it. And if somebody needs something like that and it's not going to be in violation, we would support them on that. We support people all the time for clothing. We support people for hygiene needs. We support people for bedding. We're not going to leave somebody high and dry, and we'll talk about that a little bit more if they need it. But most of the stuff at these campsites is heavily soiled and sometimes has bed bugs, a lot of times has fluid on it. We're not going to be storing it in our facility. It's just not, doesn't make sense to. And then I think the final question is, where do they go? So we offer them a whole lot of services of where they're going to go. So most people are not going to elect the services that we provide through the county. So there's a spirit house during the day or the hospitality house during the night. The hospitality house always keeps beds for law enforcement. I don't want to say always, we don't regulate them, but I've never seen where they don't have some beds available when we need them. Most of the people in these locations do not want to go to those facilities for whatever reason. If that's the case, then we tell them, hey, here are some legal spots that you can go. And we'll give them that option to go there. I want to kind of touch on that more because even what we do.
What are those spots?
So usually it's a county. If you're not in the city, then there is no municipal code that's preventing you from camping, right? Some things that I recommend to a lot of people is there's a lot of state campsites that are exceedingly inexpensive that you can stay at for 2 weeks at a time. You have to leave for 1 week and then come back. Some of them allow 4 weeks at a time, but I encourage that as well. And we'll go if it's something where they can't afford that, and I think it's $12 a night. Some of them they don't even check. That's something that we could look into to try to assist them with that if that's the detriment to them. Now, a lot of times those are out of town, so in order to come in and get their supplies can be impactful, but we try in every way, shape, and form to work with the person to give them the best opportunities that work for them. There was some brought up from the public that I appreciate about vans, trailers, motorhomes that people live in. That, again, there is ordinances for that. You cannot do that in the city, but we work exceptionally hard with not towing those or impacting people that are sleeping in those vehicles. I'm very aware that that's people's homes. So the biggest one for those homes when you are parking in neighborhoods, again, is waste, solid waste. Those motorhomes do not store much, and it's got to go somewhere. So we don't like those in residential areas, but we will provide locations of where they can go. Again, that's usually going to be in the county. Hopefully the county's not watching today, but usually that's going to be in the county. And they are allowed to camp at those locations. And they're allowed to go there, and if the vehicle is operating, they can come back during the day to get their supplies, but they cannot stay in one specific location for camping purposes. So I think that's all of your questions there. We're going to go over some slides for Evan, unless you have any direct questions for me. I do want to add one more thing, two more things. This is fire safety is a huge threat and one of the biggest threats for this. Just before I came to this city in May of 2022, when I was still in the Central Valley, fire there is not one of our greatest fears. It's just not the biggest threat there. We had, just before I left, I was in charge of public works, as most of you know. Somebody was having a cooking fire in May in the Central Valley. It's hot, it was not a warming fire. And there was a windy day. The wind caught it from the river. It came up and burned down 3 houses in the middle of the day before we could stop it. It's a huge threat. And we don't know actually if it was a cooking fire or if there was some other means. We just know it came from a camp and then spread up. It is a huge threat that we have to be very aware of. There it burned 3 houses. Here it can be severely impactful. You saw in my report that some of the stats and the numbers that are coming out for these campsites for fires, and most of this data is coming from bigger cities, but it's up 75 to 80% from these campsites for fires. That's a huge threat to our community that we have to be cognizant of and try to work against. The other thing is I'm a big believer in there is no point in chasing the problem, right? If you're just moving people from location to location, you're just chasing the same problem every day. You have to identify it and try to get to the bottom of it. In something like this, as with many of our problems, we'll never solve it, but we can make it better. So I firmly believe, and as does all our officers, that communicating with the individuals and find out what assists them best. So we have one individual, for example, that wants to leave town. I'm not going to just send you on a bus ticket, as some community people do. I won't do that. So what I did is I said, hey, where do you want to go? And he said, this is where I want to go. I said, okay, I will buy you a ticket there. But first, I want your friends and family to vouch that this is going to be better for you, and you have a support group when you get there, that I'm not just dumping you off somewhere else and giving you another problem. We need to make sure that we understand that we're dealing with human beings. And just throwing them from one place to the next doesn't help anybody. So he did. He came in and he provided me 5 names. I've now met with his father, I've met with his sister, and a couple of his buddies for where he wants to go. And I haven't brought it to Sean yet, but I don't think it'll be an issue that will facilitate getting this guy to where he might want to go, because his family supports that. And if it was just a lack of means, that benefits all of us, right? To try to help him, that helps us. But those type of relationships, he had heard, we didn't go to him on that one. He had heard that we will help. So he came to the police department and said, hey, I need help. This is what I'm looking for. And that's what we're working towards. We're trying to make sure we have enough communication and rapport with our community that they trust us enough to come and say, hey, I am in a tough situation here. Can you help? And we can. So that's where we're at. I'm going to turn it over to, is there any questions for me? And then I'll turn it over to Evan. Or do you want to do questions at the end?
Let's do questions at the end.
Okay.
Good evening, council. I'm going to speak definitely to the risk side of things, as that is my title, Risk Reduction Officer, and give you some perspective on the immediate camps that we removed in our open space areas. So I do have some graphics here for you of those camps that we did remove, some context around this issue. On the weekend of June 14th, Nevada City, within city limits in these open spaces, had 2 reported vegetation fires. Both were contained within 50 by 50 square, basically, but they were both near these encampments. Oh, click, perfect.
You were telling Gabby to start the time.
They would.
You should
It
be
never
able to
works for
point
me.
right here. All right, well.
Next slide. So one fire was by Hirschman's. It was closer to 49. It was kind of up a steep slope that was also next to one of the camps you'll see pictures of. The other fire start was, I believe, one was on a Friday, one was on a Saturday. That one was on Sugarloaf. Once again, all these fuels are really dry. They're all just about 10-hour fuels. They're going to dry out after moisture really quickly and really carry fire quickly. The perspective I kind of take with some of this is the defensible space inspections we do on typical parcels. Any of these materials within that 5-foot zone would be a huge concern, even near structures here. So there is definitely a huge risk to these these camps that we removed. This first picture is just some mattress and tire. You can see that we removed kind of from this gully here, right on kind of that'd be the west side of Hirschman's. All right, next picture.
You got the clicker.
You think it works now?
Thanks to Sean.
Once again, this was the most established camp that you're going to start seeing pictures of here. It was built into the side of a hill. It was right next to one of the fires that began. Oh, it does work. So, you see here that there were quite a bit of materials that once again would serve as fuels and turn this fire into more of a structure fire, which is much more difficult to contain and manage. So really an extreme risk within this encampment too. There was a charcoal stove with some ashes in it inside this dwelling. Right outside of there too, there were some generators. There was definitely lots of sources of fuels and ignition sources. When paired together, those two would not pan out well where this was located.
Wow.
So this is after we removed the camp. The pictures you just saw were taken where that blue arrow is pointing into that hillside. This particular camp had a balcony, really, that looked over it. And once again, really extreme steep slope, once again, would carry fire quite intensely there. This is a picture of the fire scar that was actually put out by the crews there. You can see on the left-hand side was an established hand line. We came in with the mini excavator, removed hazardous fuels along with the encampment itself, providing a little bit more access and mitigation measures while we were there. So you can see that that pathway led to where that camp was. It was directly after that burn scar. This picture was taken up on Sugarloaf. I've colloquially heard this kind of hillside called Dead Man's Hill. I don't know if that's used, but it was right after the second Bullards. It's kind of a little landing there and an access road, but it goes straight up a steep hillside. Once again, all those 10-hour fuels are present with lots of fine, flashy fuels included within that camp that you see a tarp over here. Once again, this camp also had lots of evidence of fires being made, old coals, kind of areas where you can see that that activity was occurring, which would once again present an extreme hazard to Nevada City and really Nevada County as a whole if something were to ignite in this region. So those are the photos we have for you tonight. We did finish the cleanup there at Sugarloaf. So all that was removed in total from the first camp. It was about 3 tons of material, and I believe it was about the same for that second one. So the pictures show you kind of the general picture, but there really was lots of tonnage of waste material, hazardous materials, and those fuels that would carry a fire very intensely and present a very large risk for Nevada City. And before these camps were removed, we followed the process that the chief mentioned there with the 72 hours notice, communications with those folks, and whatnot. If you have anything else, we'll take questions. If
Yeah,
Chief
and generally
has
in the 72-hour notice, most of the campsites are cleared. They leave a lot of trash for us, but they do generally comply with that and move along. A big part of that is because we don't just post and leave. We post, we come back and say, hey, we're coming on this date. We come back again and say, we're coming on this date. Are you packed up? Here's some locations you can go, but you cannot stay here. So generally we get compliance just by that way.
One other thing I would like to mention in the staff report, we do list out a tentative partnership with Sierra Roots that would hopefully address some of the risk reduction aspects along with some more long-term solutions as well. And that's through the California Volunteers Neighbor to Neighbor grant.
Thank you. All right, I think we're going to take public comment on this, so I don't know how you guys might want to.
Wing out.
Yeah, that works.
Howdy. One thing I learned in history class, actually from Evan's fiance, the classifications and steps of genocide. It is a very long one. It does not just begin with extermination of people. It begins by classification of people and defining them as something else. And then it moves on to discrimination and many, many other steps. And what I see here, not specifically, well, here, but also across the country, is the systemic dehumanization of homeless people as less than. If you go and talk to people, many will see them as less than human. They won't see them as people equally deserving of having the rights to live as a person. They'll see them as just, oh, it's a problem that needs to be dealt with, and the dealing with that problem is to leave them out of sight. Because if you can't see them, it doesn't affect people. That's not true. If we just go and send them somewhere else, it doesn't solve the problem. Sure, they're out of sight, but they're still there. And yes, I agree, fire is a very big concern. It's a big concern everywhere. But I don't believe that the way to solve that is to just go sweep the encampments. I don't believe that just telling them to move along is going to solve that. We need more permanent solutions. If you look at a viable one, look at Sacramento with Camp Resolution. What happened is that the city went and gave them a lease, and they have permanently housed 19 people and temporarily house some 60 other people in a place that keeps those people off the streets, out of camping in places. And it's very feasible. We have places around here that are abandoned. We have places that we could easily turn into something to allow people to camp safely, to allow people to live in a trailer, or hell, to even build affordable housing with no barriers and hopefully no rent to allow people to stay there. Because ultimately, sweeping doesn't actually solve any problem. It just pushes it down the road for later. We need permanent solutions, and there are lots of ways to do that. And I'll be honest, we're not doing a very good job about it. Not just here, but everywhere. Homelessness is only increasing, and it's only going to keep increasing so long as capitalism continues to force people out of their jobs, make it so that they can't pay their rent anymore. And it's very true. Some 60% of America lives paycheck to paycheck. If they lose that paycheck, they'll become homeless. And chances are they're going to go set up a camp somewhere in a tent that's walking distance from town so that they can go buy food, they can drink water, or they could use the bathroom, which there aren't actually that many public bathrooms around here. There's one in City Hall. That's great. But there needs to be more places. There needs to be more accessibility things. Not just for unhoused people, but public bathrooms all over the place is great for lots of people. Same with water fountains. Same with any other number of things to make the town more accessible for everyone, not just unhoused people.
Thank you.
I need way more than 3 minutes. First of all, punishment isn't the same as the law. Dan, I'm sorry, but that's absurd. First of all, 2 fires from homeless people. 90 to 95% of fires are started by humans. The vast majority are not homeless people. It's a smokescreen. It's not the main issue. Do you know how many, I know we watch Ubinet. Do you know how many fires start in this county every day? It's not homeless people. It's a way to push them out, to blame them for the issue. It's not. I'm sorry. It's chains dragging from boats. It's PG&E. It's industry. It is not homeless people. It is scapegoating the problem to push them out because we don't like to see them. I'm sorry, it's a fact. Also, legal warming fires and cooking fires are protected. We should live in this community as if Boise stands and Grants Pass never happened, because that's the humane thing to do. We should not be cracking down further on homeless people. As far as knowing homeless people, protecting them, I'm sorry, it's not true. We called him Indian Bill. He was a friend of mine. He was a direct descendant of Chief Bill Kelly, local indigenous man who I was a friend of, that I tried to get to sleep in my home when there was a snowstorm. And he said, no, I'm good, I'm set. The police went under the bridge right there, took his sleeping gear, and he froze to death. They knew him well. They knew that was his gear, and they killed him. That's murder. This shit happens all the time. We need to, like Josh said, actually address the issue by giving these people a humane option, not pushing them into the county and then blaming them for forest fires, because that is not what's happening. Okay. Also, fines are not a good deterrent. They don't have any money. That should be obvious. Please consider a stance on homelessness that makes sense logically. We are going to have an insane influx of homeless people coming at us. They are clearing camps in San Francisco. They are clearing camps in Sacramento. And they are coming here, and we need to be ready to accept them with humanity and dignity. Because if we just keep the same policy that those places have, we are going to have a huge shit show on our hands. Please be ready to take care of people because they need help, not criminalize them because they're just trying to exist. This is super important, and it should be one of our top priorities as local government. Thank you.
Thank you.
I honestly don't even know where to begin because that whole ordinance is so disturbing to me. To act like you know all of the unhoused people in the community is just not true. It's just not true. People live in their cars, people couch surf, those people, I'm one of them, are also unhoused. Our interactions have been in here and you trying to get me to sit on 115-degree pavement at the parade, you haven't helped me. So it's really frustrating to hear you say that when you're also talking about, yes, criminalizing unhoused people. I've lived in this community almost my whole life. I was displaced for the first time and lost housing for the first time. in 2021, super traumatizing for me. I'm a disabled person. It's traumatizing for anyone. I saved up, bought a car. My family moved into a house downtown on the same street as Adam, and I have to move my car every 3 days. As an unhoused person, that is so difficult to manage sometimes. Like, I don't feel like the way that people are talking about being unhoused, that you really are like thinking about what you're talking about. Like $12 to go pay for a campsite every night, or like $12 is a lot of money. $12 is a meal. It's just incredible to me to think about criminalizing people who are in these situations. $100 could change the trajectories of someone's life. Like, you're talking about people's lives here, and you're looking at photos of encampments, but those are homes. That was all someone's stuff. I'm unhoused and displaced again, and my stuff looks like one of those camps. Like, I have to sort through my shit. Where do you sort through your shit if you don't have anywhere to go? It's so ridiculous. The fact that it's being framed as a wildfire concern is so frustrating to me. The fact that you want to go off statistics of a city that has high numbers of unhoused people starting fires. We're not a city. Why would we use that? I don't even understand. Like, it's just not, this isn't seeming logical to me. I don't understand why instead you can't, like, give people fire extinguishers, maybe feed people and ask them to watch an educational video on fire safety. Like, there's so many other options that I feel like if you guys put your minds to it, you could do. This is super triggering and frustrating because it's just going to get worse, and to act like you know the problem because of the unhoused people who are visible to you is just out of touch. So I just needed to speak that into the space. This is so honestly terrifying to me, honestly terrifying. I already can't afford to live in my hometown. I'm being forced out of this town as it becomes more and more inaccessible. So this is just to me like, okay, well, I can't live in my hometown then. Like, I can't even be unhoused in my hometown. That is terrible. I don't wish it on any of you. Thank you.
I don't have anything written down, so not real good at just getting up here and speaking, but I just, am like horrified by this because it's coming from, just hearing with the Supreme Court and then seeing our Democratic governor personally going out there and sweeping up trash, and then it's like, it's here too. Now we're talking about this, and criminalizing. Nobody wants to hear defund the police, and this is what that term means. Like, as I'm sitting there, all I'm thinking about is how much does this cost? Like, that money could be put forth actually helping people rather than just digging the hole even deeper for them. If you give them a fine and and tear up their home, where are they going? This is doing nothing but criminalizing poverty and just continuing the cycle. So, and yes, the fires, the homeless people are not what come to mind when I think about all these horrible fires. I think of PG&E or whatever, saying second what Zach said. It's like, come on now, it's not homeless people. And if anything, people should be criminalized for having all of these shelter, places where people could shelter just sitting empty while people are forced onto the streets. Yes, some people choose it, but majority do not. It's because of capitalism. But anyway.
Hi. I am the project lead for the Neighbor to Neighbor fire grant. And let me start with a couple of things. Please don't say the homeless. They are our homeless. They are our citizens. And until we own the problem, we are the problem. Sierra Roots at our weekly lunches only gives people cold food. And we tell them every day, do not start a fire. So we're on it already. Sweeping camps does not solve the problem. It just moves it. And to say that we can't solve the problem, of course we can't, as long as we believe that. Fines, as the people said, these people are poor. I've been homeless, but you never saw me. You don't see most of the homeless people. We're very good at hiding, living in our cars, not getting caught. Believing that just the people on the street are everybody is wrong. Most homeless people do not have mental illnesses or are addicts. University of San Francisco, other studies have shown that. Instead of moving people, give them a safe place to be. All the time, they tell me two things. They want safety and toilets. If you put porta potties, if you know where they are, you can keep it clean, give them a garbage can. That's a simple thing. Give them a porta potty. Fines and sweeps and chasing them around, just going to drive them further back into the woods, make a higher fire risk, more pollution, more garbage in our beautiful environment. Nevada County Home Path is a group that has studied small camps, safe camps. Now, we have a lot of people, they are mentally ill and they need support. But we can't support them if we keep chasing them around the county like whack-a-mole. The reason our group is called No Place to Go is because there is no place to go. Let's give them a place to go. And as far as punishment, in Tennessee, it's a felony to sleep on public land. 6 years in prison. That's ridiculous. That's Tennessee, what you can say. So Sierra Roots is here to work with you guys, and we want to make it safe for everybody. Not just homeless people, but the community as a whole. We can all work together. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really don't like coming up here without something prepared. I'm not good at this. But I really feel very passionately about this topic. I just wanted to kind of echo what everyone else is saying, especially this gentleman here. That was beautiful, thank you. I have talked to you personally. I have a sister who happens to be schizophrenic and homeless. And she's very loved. And look, this is why I write things down. She's very loved. And she's not a problem. She just is struggling in life and has been for many years. And because of the laws in place, her family is unable to have her committed or get her the help that she needs. And because she's schizophrenic, she doesn't think she needs help. She thinks she works for the CIA. I put out a missing persons report on her every single year. I just got notified yesterday that she was arrested. Thank God, and she's still alive. These are real people. They don't have any money. If you give them fines, they cannot pay them. If there does come a day where they are able to try and get some help, or they want to get off the street, then they're going to have all of these fines and misdemeanors and issues that they're going to have to face, which makes everything 10 times more difficult. I would encourage you guys to look at them as people and not problems. They really do have family members who care about them and who love them. They're somebody's babies. They're somebody's everything. They're just facing these really difficult times, and it is near impossible to live in this area anymore with just regular, typical paying jobs. Like somebody else mentioned, everyone that I know, a lot of people are living check to check, and we're one check away from being on the streets ourselves. Anyways, sweeping the camps, all the things, I just don't see how that would help anything. I don't see how that would solve any of the problem. It just moves them from place to place to place. It reinforces that they are not welcome, that they are not human, and we continue to dehumanize them and to treat them like fucking garbage. And they're not. They're human beings. And God forbid any of us be in their spot and get treated like that. Thank you.
Great. Well, it does kind of sound like there is a bit of a plan of action here forming. Like, we take the money that we would have used clearing these camps, which cost a lot. You said 3 tons of waste in one camp. I say 3 tons of someone's belongings that you destroyed with enough notice. Take that money, let's reinvest it into taking some of these empty houses that are sitting, or empty buildings. Let's give our neighbors, our unhoused neighbors, a place to stay. These are our neighbors. These are people in our community. These are beloved of our community. They deserve to be here. They deserve to be safe here. Putting the mask of a fire, this being a fire safety issue, everyone's said it so far, it is weak at best. We know wildfires start for many reasons. Saying that it's a homeless problem is very much so just, passing the buck. And I also want to say that Chief did mention that he likes to address problems and instead of passing them down the line. I do think telling someone to go camp at county is actually exactly the definition of passing the buck. Go to a campsite they don't check, that's passing the buck. How do we address it? This is our responsibility. These are our people. Let's make sure that we can do better for them. It will do better for ourselves. Let's put more public restrooms around. The fact that you have to pay to use a restroom in this town, because so many places say, customers only, highly inaccessible. Give people a dumpster. Oh my goodness, what a great idea. Now you don't have to deal with 3 tons of waste because people can actually get rid of the things they don't want instead of it accumulating in a place that will become a fire hazard. If we take such small steps, such little things to improve quality of life for people instead of terrorizing them. I mean, 5 offenses of sleeping on public property, that's just a week. That's just a work week. Someone who doesn't have a home to sleep in is going to have to stay somewhere every night of the week. If it happens to be on public property, well, first night's fine, second night's fine, but by the 5th night, by Friday, all of a sudden they're looking at a $400 something fine, maybe, by the will of the cop that's doing it. Maybe we have police that are lenient, but that won't necessarily always be the case. We can't rely on the good graces of a few individuals. We need to make sure that this becomes policy and something that can be upheld in a real way. Thank you.
Hold on, one more.
I just want to suggest being creative and being intelligent rather than like someone was saying, passing it down the line or whatnot. But I mean, our minds are infinite. We can create wonderful things and support community. It's time to change this paradigm of like being separate. This person's over there. I'm taking care of myself and my family, which is a part of our American culture and West Coast culture, coastal culture, very individualistic. So I just want to encourage us as a community, not just you, but me and all of us, expand the mind and the possibilities to help support these people in need in our community.
Thank you.
There's a lot of wild stuff coming out of the Supreme Court, and I think that means it's time to nix the this ordinance that we have. And it seems like this is all about just moving forward with the new post-grants pass reality. And we need amnesty for the unhoused. And dumpsters and porta potties, it sounds like a great idea. It sounds probably more cost effective. All that fuel, the homeless people didn't put that there. That fuel is the result of fire suppression policies of Nevada City. That needs to be addressed. Amnesty for homeless people.
Thank you. All right, back to the council.
Do you want me to try to answer some of those?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. Who would like to go?
I'll jump in since I asked for this item.
Exactly. Thank you.
So we could discuss it. I agree with much of the public comment that you don't solve problems by getting rid of people. I don't think that is our policy, that we get rid of people. We are trying at best to get rid of a hazard. It is a hazard to our public health and our safety if camps accumulate so much stuff, regardless whether or not it's personal, that it becomes a fire hazard to the town. So in that respect, we do have to clear the camps of that hazard in order to protect the city. That is one of the reasons I was elected to this position, was to keep the city safe from fire. And that does not mean that we criminalize or punish the people whose stuff accumulates in these camps. We can do both. We can take care of them, and we can keep the city safe from fire. That is the mandate I think we need to work on. How do we help them and keep the city safe? I could go on and on about individual duties and responsibilities to help the disadvantaged. I mean, you all know that, I don't say this often, but that I'm a Christian and that I believe very much in the passage from Matthew, that what you do to the least of these, you do also to me. These are the least of us. These are the people without resources. We have to help them. If the city cannot, because of financial contingencies or legal restrictions, then we individually must step up and do it. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Council Member, and I'd like to also acknowledge that I know that you personally work on these issues through your religious community and faith, and that you don't just talk about it, but you actually take action, and I appreciate that. Anyone else?
Yeah, no, I'm just going to start more problems.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I'm happy to go. I have plenty to say, but
Chief, I know that the whole saga with Andre that you were really personally involved in. I know that you do care about these folks, the ones that you're aware of. As it was said, that there's a lot of these folks are invisible to us, and there's the ones who make themselves really known. And I know that you've taken that on personally, which I know all of us appreciate. It is such a frustrating situation. We don't have the resources to provide the kind of care we wish we could. As Lou said, there's an aspect where we all have to take on what we are able to, and everyone in this room is. The reality is we're all closer to being unhoused than we are to being billionaires. A run of bad luck, gives us all. We could all be in a real dire situation. It's absolutely paramount that we protect our city from fire risk, which is just unbelievable right now. And as Lou said, there has to be a way to do that while recognizing the humanity of these folks. And thank you for the presentation, and thanks to everyone for the public comment.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if I could comment on that a little bit. I mean, I agree very much. I agree with a lot of what's been said tonight. I don't like to bring this up a lot, but I think you're all aware. I do 100% believe that we're dealing with human beings and we have to focus at it. As everybody knows in this room, I started from the ground up my own shelter that is still in operation to this day for the unhoused. It's not in our community, but it was something that took a lot, that I had to raise all the funds for. I did all the construction, and it still is housing people to this day. I'm trying to solve the problem on both ends, right? There is long-term fixes that need to be focused on, and I agree 100%, but there's also short-term problems that we have to focus on too. Because if we don't look at those will turn into long-term or massive problems. It is a balance, but it's a balance that we're always trying to approach every day. But what I can promise is every day we are looking at this as we're dealing with human beings. And we're aware that we have to approach it from that angle. And I think we're achieving that. I know there was some examples that I could say personally, Sean and I have opened our doors here when people need it, somewhere to sleep for the night. We've purchased sleeping material when people have needed it. We don't leave people hanging if we can at all help it. But we also have to focus not just on the fire. I mean, we've talked a lot about that. The vermin increase, the chance of sexual assault for females that are unhoused. It all goes dramatically through the roof in these situations that we cannot ignore. And ignoring it is also not merciful. So we have to look at it and recognize that the problems that are there and figure out how we can come up with solutions. But
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings. I know that people in the room do too. I'm feeling that on this side of the table and also on that side of the table. This is a systemic issue that is not ours alone. And we're approaching a systemic issue with a bunch of Band-Aids. And we're doing it in a way that we're trying to do the best we can. And I believe that's been true. And I 100% appreciate, Chief, what I believe is a community policing approach to this. I do believe that you treat people as humans. I'm sorry that people in this room had a different experience. We do need more permanent solutions. We do need more humane solutions. This ordinance, you know, this is a receive a presentation and provide any needed direction. This is an ordinance that's already been on the books. This is an ordinance that this body did not create in its current iteration. The chief didn't create, and we're working within the parameters. In fact, you know, we're not going to dismantle capitalism here tonight, but boy, if we had a Nevada City ordinance to dismantle capitalism, I bet it would work because those ordinances are really enshrined here, aren't they? I think there are many things true. I think that there is a risk of fire. I don't care what anybody in this room says. And the tactics that we are using are not completely humane, are dehumanizing. To dismantle someone's home, however much of a hazard or nuisance, shall I say, you know, this is an exaggerated version of our nuisance ordinance that we were proposed with earlier, right? And that's nobody here's fault. We are doing, quote, the best we can, and I believe that to be true. And I do think that we have opportunities to, and I've said this on many things over the years, because we are a small community, because we are a small community of people who care, of volunteers, of people who show up, we are able to do things differently here. We do have the capacity to be a pilot city in a lot of ways. Adam and I just had our first meeting of our new committee assignments. Our committee is comprised of a few previous committees consolidated together. One of those is the Housing Committee. I would love for Adam and I to find ways to work with the county, Sierra Roots, and law enforcement to look at another way to approach this, to look at this ordinance, to figure out how we can mitigate harm, take care of people. And I know we are doing that to some degree, but the fact of the matter is these are homes. You know, I have hazards and fuel in my home too. And so does my neighbor, and so does that neighbor. And I don't trust everybody on my street or in this town with that configuration of things. So I don't have an answer. And if anyone had an answer to this issue would have already been solved. This is the $1 million question across the United States right now as homelessness increases. So I would like us, Adam, to look at this and prioritize this in our committee and find different ways that are less Band-Aid assemblage and more long-term solutions. And that's the best I can do here. And I just want to encourage I'm going to withhold that statement. Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember, and thank you all. So I want to be clear about a couple things first. We do not clear camps. We cleared these camps after we responded to fires that were created by the people that inhabited those camps. That is public health and safety. We're not blaming everybody for fire everywhere. We're not blaming homeless. This was actual, we had to go send fire equipment to put out fires in these locations and then realized that we needed to clean that up so it didn't happen again. That's a very real situation. Anybody here, I mean, I've been around, I don't know, Sean, maybe you were here, 49er fire? Anybody remember the 49er fire? Started by a homeless man trying to burn his own waste. Lit the biggest fire Nevada County has ever seen, burned all the way to Marysville. Okay, so a homeless guy did that. A homeless person did that. Our homeless person did that. The persecution of homeless people that took place after that event is unparalleled. People were run out of town. People were chased down. You have no idea how bad that was because it was a situation that wasn't mitigated and created, and it created hell for people. It was awful, but that's what happens. There is a real hazard here, and our job is to mitigate that hazard. So I want to be real clear about that. This was not us seeing that somebody's living there and we're going to go clean it out because we don't want them living there. This was a response to actual emergency situations that occurred. Okay. So the other thing too is I get beat up all the time like I don't understand the historical context of all of this stuff. I'm an old guy. I've been around. You can lay all of this at the feet of Ronald Reagan. California used to have a mental health system that was fantastic. It was amazing with state hospitals, with group homes. They were completely dismantled when he was governor. Everything that we know about homelessness in California, and it exploded here well before any place else, was due to the dismantling of that mental health system and the acknowledgement. Mr. Durkin, I'd like to thank you for your tireless advocacy on behalf of homelessness. I read your articles all the time. You don't know us. I have 30 years working on homeless issues, deep issues of building organizations, of building housing, of getting treatment. I have worked this issue so hard for so long, and the reductionist sentiments drive me nuts. This is a very complex situation. It is our problem. It is all of our problem. I do know the answer. The answer is redistribution of wealth. That's the answer, but we ain't going to see that. We're not going to see that.
We could make an ordinance.
Maybe we'll do an ordinance. Let's talk to Dean about that. But the fact is that these things have been around for a long time. What the point I want to make, and you know, this is nuts. I'm saying this. We don't have an unhoused people problem in Nevada City. It's like 5 people, 10 people, 25 people, even the ones we don't see, which I'm well aware of how that works. It's not that many. But I will tell you that if you're in a city, you don't get money for this. The way the money flows, the continuum of care, like I said, I have worked this system really hard for a really long time, comes from the feds to the state to the counties. That's where it stops. The counties can distribute that money. They can support nonprofits, but it doesn't come to a city. A city does. We put in a lot of services. You start to chalk up the amount of money that the chief spends in hours and time that Evan spends. We don't get any money for any of that. That comes out of our general fund because of the way the system is structured. When Gavin Newsom says, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to take your money away, he's talking to the counties. He's talking to the counties because the money comes to the state, to the counties, and then gets distributed there. He can't tell us to do it because we don't get any money that he could take away. There's no leverage. It's a complicated system, but we have a compassionate police department. We are not interested in dehumanizing anybody in our city. We are not. This is one of the most compassionate groups of people I ever worked with, and we care about this shit. We care deeply about it, and we have a team that's working to do the best we can with extremely difficult situations. And we're going to stay on it. I like the idea, Councilmember Fernandez, of us taking this up and seeing what more there is to do. We're already partnering with Sierra Roots through our Neighbor to Neighbor grant because we know how important that is. We know how important it is to bring everyone into the conversation in our community, and that's what we're doing. So yeah, I'm really impassioned about this stuff because I've worked it so hard. I know how. I pulled my brother off the street 3 times, Liz, and then I had to stop because there was nothing I could do for him. I did the best I could for a really long time, and then I had to let go. I don't know where he is now. You know, that's how hard it is. That's how it touches everyone, and that's how real it gets. We're doing a good job with what we've got. And I applaud the chief again and again, and our police department. Yeah, I know they move people around. I know in my neighborhood, I live next to the park, okay? You know, so the music comes to the park. Hey, Van City. You know, I got the RV park over in the parking lot next to the creek in Pioneer Park, where the people pull in all the time. You know, I don't say anything, but I have neighbors who get worried about their own public safety when they get vans, sketchy vans, parking in their house, people coming and going. And I always just say this as a public works director, I have 3 concerns about homeless issues. Sanitation. And oh, did I say sanitation? It is the human waste element that is the most toxic thing we need. I had a cholera outbreak in the city of Salinas from the waste that accumulated. That's how bad it got. So yeah, it's tough. It's hard. We all need to do better. I hate that we live in a country where people go hungry and people go unhoused, given the enormous wealth that we have. I do this, and I do this in a community that cares. That's the best I can do, and I'm proud of that. I worked it hard. I'm burnt out on it, really hard for a long time. But we're doing a really good job with what we've got, and I think it's going to get better. Thank you. So, did you receive direction?
I think so. So, thank you, Councilmember.
I just wanted to say the 9 points of how they might work with Sierra Roots are excellent. I think we should do all of them.
Can I speak a little bit to the process for what we did? We reached out to Sierra Roots, asked them what they think might work, and then we evaluated it and maybe added 1 or 2 things. Now we're at the state that they're going to be looking at it again and then moving forward with that. But to speak a little bit to the creativity of finding solutions, that's definitely going to take some creativity within that. And we recognize they're a small nonprofit, but we really are focusing on trying to attempt to find creative solutions to this problem.
And so that I appreciate the direction. We will work with the now Economic and Community Development Committee to bring this issue to light. As you noted, it's a complex problem. Tonight sucks. I love this city 99.9% of the time, and this 1% I don't. But I love the fact that this stuff can come up and the council can be uncomfortable because the people in the audience are uncomfortable, which makes us all want to do more, because in most places it doesn't work that way. The people in the audience say stuff and then nothing happens from the dais. No offense to those communities, but we're not that community. So I love the fact that I'm uncomfortable with tonight. So I'll take it. But to Evan's point, we purposely put money in that grant application for this purpose, because our unhoused are part of our communities. They're part of our neighborhoods, right? And so there will be more opportunities for us to engage with grants and other things, more things that will be coming to you throughout the summer. And I appreciate everything you said tonight. We'll take that as direction, funnel it back to the committees and back to the council in the future. And thanks to everybody that stayed all the way through to the last item, which is after, unless you want to give more comments on this.
No, I think we're good. Anything else?
No.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for your
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you for your presentation and your good work. And your good work. All right.
No, it's all right.
Okay, item 11. Brian, you're still with us. Consideration and award of contract with Beeline Sports LLC in an amount not to exceed $653,712 for Seven Hills Field replacement. authorize a contingency not to exceed, that's enough.
I'll start with the not important part, and then Brian can handle the actual grant part. But last year, we were awarded a second Prop 64 grant, which we call Cohort 3. Thank you to the then Mayor Fleming. Second time, the previous one was Cohort 2. It's confusing because it's the first time I got Cohort 2, the second time I got it Cohort 3. Doesn't really matter. Got $3 million over 5 years, and one of those things was to upgrade the Seven Hills Middle School field. Along the way, kind of revamped the process. Some of the money is going to that. Some of it is going to Phase 1, the Nevada City Skate Park. There will be Phase 2 on both of them so that they'll both be fully funded at some point, but not today. This is Phase 1 of the field update. And so a condition of the grant funding was that the field become a city park, essentially, after hours. And so the school district retains ownership and control of the field. They'll still be the ones that do the rentals. The city has the opportunity to take exclusive use of that field for up to 10 days a year, and they would certainly give us more, but it's just written in the contract that we could schedule in where we'd say, hey, we're going to have, special event in that area. I can't imagine we'd do 10 in the first year, but it'd be amazing if we found, space for that kind of thing. But the shared use agreement that is in the packet effectuates that relationship with the school district. I noted in there that the requested action would be for you to approve the agreement and allow me to make any non-substantive changes that were approved by the city attorney. The school board, Nevada City School District Board approved the agreement last night. So I don't believe that will be needed, but you never know. But that is a great first step towards what will be multiple iterations of this, because the next, after this field goes in, thank you to Brian, he'll talk about everything that he worked on to design this and get it out to bid and then save us over $200,000 from what the bid price was to get this done. But we still have more work to do on this field, which will include eventually a track around the field, a bathroom and snack shack that's been long needed, since it was Gold Country Soccer. When Adam and I were running around on that field, it was porta potty. Actually, they didn't even do porta potties back then. It was just go pee in the woods, I believe, was the case. Now we do require them to use porta potties, but eventually there'll be purpose-made bathrooms at that facility, amongst a number of other things. Continuity to the, what's that?
No girls' sports?
Soccer's a girl sport.
I'm just saying, did they go pee? They were expected to go pee in the woods too.
Yeah, the woods are not gender specific.
Family facilities?
Wow, we're getting off topic.
Yeah, changing tables.
No gender bathroom.
Yes. So that agreement was approved by the school board. It is before you tonight, along with the award of the bid, and I'll let Brian get into that and share with you how he saved a whole bunch of money and actually made it a better project with, instead of hydro seed, sod, which will make it usable much sooner.
I wouldn't understand value engineering.
That's what we did. Go ahead, Brian.
I have a definition of that that's not true.
Yeah, so this is a good-sized field. It's like 3 acres, and it can accommodate lots, 2 different Little League setups or multiple teams practicing for soccer at the same time. So it can serve thousands of people. And so even in the shape it was in, which was pretty rough, it was being used quite a bit early in the summer for Little League sports. And so it's appropriate that this cannabis-free zone money coming from the state would be used for this purpose. And we tried to get as many bids as we could. We put it on the Contractors Exchange, our website, put it out for a pretty good amount of time. I think it was like a month advertised. And but we knew one local firm, which is Weiss Landscape, would bid on it. And then they teamed with Beeline from Lincoln, who they've worked with before on a lot of different fields. So they turned out to be the only bidder. And since they were the only bidder, we were able to look at the project and look at ways to change it up and save cost. And they know more about fields than I do. We don't design fields very much here. So they came up with some really good solutions on improving the drainage, because we're recontouring the field, doing all new topsoil, all new grass, all new irrigation. And they came up with a different irrigation design, reduced the amount of export by screening and reusing topsoil. And then they just really wanted it to be a good product for the city and the school. And so they suggested sod, which is actually more expensive. So they tried to come up with enough savings to get the sod in the project, because sod will be more instantaneously and they're growing instead of like waiting for the weather to accommodate us. And with seed, there's too many unknowns. So anyway, this is kind of a list of what was done for value engineering, working with the low bidder to get the price to match what the grant availability was. And there's future phases. And so we're recommending award and here to answer any questions.
And sorry, Mayor, on the money side, we are funding this from the city. We'll seek reimbursement from Prop 64 process. It's a quarterly reimbursement. We'll be fine on that. And then the school district will be paying $150,000 into this phase one of this $53,712. That'll be due to the city by the end of January. So the project will be materially complete by the time the district has to put their money in. But effectively, we'll be getting that money back to us at the same time that we'd be getting the state's money. So the city is carrying the cost until it's reimbursed, but we don't have any long-term actual expenditure.
Don't expect any problems with reimbursement?
We haven't had any with Prop 64 with cohort 2, which is all but closed out now, except for the audit, and then cohort 3. So that includes everything from our school resource officers to the vehicles we bought for them to all the vape detectors in now Seven Hills, Forest Charter, and Sale, and the cameras that go along with those. All of those have been pretty streamlined. Brittany Neundorfer, who recently moved from accounting technician to our finance supervisor position that Steve is getting ready to be our future, finance director, has done a great job of building really good processes for that, as well as our bridge project, so that when Brian turns in paperwork, she turns it around really fast, because if we do it all right, the state actually gets us money in a timely fashion, which is good. Wasn't always that way.
No, that's why I asked. Sometimes it's sketchy depending on who you're dealing with. Thank you. All right, public comment on this? Not seeing any public comment. Any comment from the council?
I do have one comment.
Okay.
I think it's awesome. I think it's really awesome that a skate park is part of this project. Eventually, part of the plan for the park there, because I was involved years ago with getting the skate park happening in Grass Valley, and it was a huge fight working with all the young people, with stickers that skateboarding is not a crime. And I'm just really thrilled that Nevada City, is stepping up and going to have a skate park for the young people. So thank you.
Thank you.
Answer your questions, yes.
Yeah. I don't want to go.
I just want to second. I just want to second that too, because I have 2 boys that love to skateboard, so it's exciting. Thank you.
Great, thank you. That's all right. Comments?
Just two. I'm so glad that we went with sod and actual grass as opposed to any artificial material, which 2 years ago was sort of on the table. And the other thing is, you may know that I'm part owner of a retreat center in Lake County, and we had a problem there where our grass died and we replaced it with sod. And I'm not an engineer, I'm not a landscape architect, but it was great for the first year and it died in the second year because it wasn't sufficiently watered and the roots didn't make it through the sod into the underlying soil. So that's a precautionary tale.
Which is great. We appreciate that. We will double check with them. There is a provision in the contract, as Brian's written it, that is a grow-in period and a warranty period for, in this case, it's only grass because we don't have any other plants on the
Just to write
on the
warranties
docket.
for sod every time, because if it doesn't get rolled right, it'll, like you said, a year, it's over, so, yeah. Anybody else?
No, I'm just happy to see this come to fruition. There was obviously some consternation about having a turf field and, not having enough money to put in a turf field for $1 million. And so I love this pivot. Brian, thank you for pushing them to make this work. This was the only bid we got, right? So we had to make this work. And for them to cut $200,000 is huge. That's $200,000 out of $800,000 bill is pretty significant. So thank you for working with them on that. And, I guess your job is also to make sure that this sod gets its roots down deep in there. We're going to hold you accountable to that sod.
Nothing else, just really appreciate your efforts on this. Thank you.
Thank you. I was hoping Mr. Baggett would be here. So the school board okayed it? Are they happy?
Enthusiastic.
Is there sarcasm?
Yeah, I can't.
No sarcasm. We worked through this mostly with the staff at the school district to get through this, but Brian created an initial design. We went back and forth, lots of site looking at different things, especially because essentially Brian designed the entire project, including the feature where the snack shack and bathroom goes, sewer, water, ADA path of travel, a whole bunch of other things, trees that have to come out to accomplish all of those things so that we'd have that whole big picture. The school, I think you all remember the meeting. They probably weren't super pumped, and that is sarcasm. When this came about, the transition did split it into 2 projects, but they've been very receptive and very helpful in crafting it into as good a project as it can be. And we'll have some economies of scale in that the bathroom snack shack at the skate park will be the same design as the one at the school, so it saves us a little bit of money. So hopefully we can do both. New board president, but obviously the previous board president, both Nevada City residents. So they've expressed their gratitude to the council for your efforts to make this happen, and so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think they're happy, but I know that is included in this action, that we would continue to work with them for the future phases, and I know that they desire that.
Doug, Jim?
Yeah, I just want to make a point that Sean and his team, these grants are not the easiest grants to manage. Now you're an expert at it now at this point, but we've been working, and this is Sean and his people working with the school on reimbursements for the way that this grant was sort of managed from the school's point of view required a lot more sort of legwork from the city. And I think that, I just want to commend Sean and his team for really working well with the school. And sometimes they weren't happy, sometimes they were happy, but there was a lot of, they at one point they just went out and started buying things that they were supposed to buy. And, there's a whole process obviously with grant reimbursement. And so that caused a lot of extra work, and Sean was really good at accommodating that. So I just want to make sure that we note that effort, and that we have been really working really hard with the school throughout this whole process. And they've gotten, a myriad of benefits from this grant and from the city. And so I hope that they're very appreciative of it at this point, because I think that the city has worked really hard to make this work and to get them what they wanted. So.
Thank you.
I thank you both.
Thank you. The only comment I was going to make is you have to be careful, Brian. I once heard value engineering described as spending all the money to find the cheapest way to build something. In the case of the person who was accused of that, it was absolutely true. So, all right, looking for a motion?
Moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Approved.
Bam.
All right, reports and future agenda items. Take it away, Sean.
Thanks, Brian.
Yes, thank you, Brian. Couple of things this evening. Our new website has been what we refer to as soft launched, so we haven't announced it, but it is live. So if you went to our website, you would see it looks different. It's certainly not perfect, and that's by design. So
Designed in imperfect way.
yeah, so
Find the problems?
How do you do it?
we'll take the next month or so to refine the items that are on there, clean it up, make sure that all the links to the things that have happened in the past are there. The things that happened really far in the past that haven't needed to be there for the last 12 years are no longer there. And then eventually we'll do an announcement of, hey, here's our new website. Along with that announcement will come an opportunity for a survey and also an in-person opportunity where we'll put the website here up on the screens here and walk people through it if they want to, so that they could give their input on the end user experience and what they might want to see. An example is today we don't have a public art page. We probably will by the time we do the actual release, but if we didn't, I would expect that there'd be people that say, hey, we'd love to have a public art page, or, we'd love to see this thing. It's possible that our mayor said that the fonts were too small on the website, so, we'll get a myriad of feedback on it. So
that your associate said hit Control Plus.
I think that is Control Plus. It does magnify your screen, so without us having to change the website. The local hazard mitigation plan, switching gears, local hazard mitigation plan for the county, and the city has an annex to that, is out. It's out for public review from August 13th to the 27th.
Oh, wow.
2-week period. We have the information on our website. The county has it on its website. You can check out either of our social media platforms for that information. It'll also be coming to the Fire Safety Advisory Committee and other groups to look at specific content that is out of date, and not having one means that we miss out on some grant opportunities. So getting that adopted and through the feds, it has to be approved by FEMA, will help us in future grant endeavors, but that's out there. Thank you to the county for leading that effort, and all the agencies, Grass Valley, Truckee, NID, and Nevada County Consolidated all have annexes to that as well. And then look for on that new website or on radio or Ubinet or the Union, look for a press release coming out updating the bridge project. So they poured one wall before, they poured the other wall, and soon you will start to see panels across the top that might look more like a bridge than a hole in the ground. So that'll be in our newsletter as well.
Dust control?
And dust control, there was, a significant incident that happened over the weekend with some dust. That was an error that should not have happened, but Brian's been working with them, one, to correct that, two, regularly scheduled sweeping of the intersection in that area. Also the huge advantage of working on the top of the deck of the bridge means we've come out of the muck, and means that, there's less opportunity for dust. But as we learned over the weekend, people can make decisions that might alter that. So we're certainly not perfect, but we were responsive to that, I think, to the best of our abilities. And, Bo, the owner of Creekside, has my email and cell phone, and Chief Foss's as well. And so we're able to address that as quickly as possible. And that's all I have this evening.
Thank you. Council members. Doug?
I'm trying to think of what happened, and it just all a blur.
Right?
Too much and not enough.
The Fire Safety Advisory Committee meets tomorrow. Last night, the mayor and I and Evan attended a very interesting meeting put on by Heidi Hall concerning fire safety and fire insurance. We listened to a lot of frustration, anger, and concerns about fire insurance, and a lot of curiosity about how to keep their homes safe. So that's good. Upcoming on September 28th, I know this is more than a month in advance, but we will have our first neighbor-to-neighbor neighborhood meeting in Pieta Hill, my neighborhood. My neighbor has agreed to host it, and we will have an opportunity for the mayor and for Evan to speak to the Pieta Hill folk about how we can be more cohesive as a community. One more thing, I think we should follow up on Mary Lou's suggestion and put a public trash can at the Tribute Trail end on Pine Street, because every time I walk from my house to here, I pick up a handful of trash. And it's a spot that can be easily remedied. Last and probably least, I will be next week in Mission Viejo swimming my little arms and legs off.
Oh, yay.
At the USMS Nationals.
What's your event?
Pray for me.
What's your event?
My events are the 200 back, the 200 breast, the 200 fly, and the 400 IM.
Jesus. So gold medals and all? Gold medals?
No, I don't even, I almost said I don't even rank in the top 10, but I do in the event that only has 7 people in it.
You're not the Katie Ledecky.
You're great.
More just lead, no Ledecky.
Is that good? You good there?
Yeah, I'm done.
Councilmember Klein?
Vice Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Appreciate
I
that.
got it all the way through.
I was really proud of you. I was really proud of you. Danielle and I had the Economic and Community Development Committee's first meeting, which I was pleased with how it went. I think that those are going to start getting more crowded because we're going to really be talking about housing and all the different things that can be meant from that word. So I would encourage folks interested in housing to show up for those. I'm looking forward to getting as much done as we can.
September 9th is the next meeting.
September 9th, I hear, is the next one. We'll be talking low-hanging fruit and planting orchards.
5:30 here in this room. We will not be planting orchards.
It's a metaphor.
For what?
Because water restrictions, right?
Low-hanging fruit
Yeah.
and planting future orchards for more fruit.
Yeah.
You're on board.
Yeah. All right. Yes, Adam and I met, and for folks who are listening, that is a combination of the Housing Committee, the Vibrancy Committee, and the Business Committee. And so we are looking at all those things and prioritize. We established our priorities last week, and we're going to continue to dig into those. We'd love to share more with you if you join us during those meetings. It will be every other month on the second Monday, again at 5:30 in this room. And Gary and I, to speak to our community process and all things Israel, Palestine, and how that lands in this community. It's too bad most of the folks left from the room to hear the update. I hear that there's frustration, that there hasn't been transparency. I'm willing to answer any questions, should folks have them. And I just want to say that this process was never, at the beginning of this process, I said, it's never going to move at a pace that is going to satisfy people who are urgent for a particular outcome. This was and is a process to engage our community and better understand how the issue affects members of our community. This process has never been about what we can or cannot do for the people in Palestine. For those that participated in the process, I'm grateful to everyone who had interviews with CBI. About 28 people had interviews. Stakeholders were established through a process between Gary and myself. We established the stakeholder groups in the community that had both a stake and an interest in this process and the outcomes. And we did the best we could to find a balanced collection of people. We did not engage everyone who's been in this room and has spoken on this issue. But we did the best we could in bringing a balanced group of folks. For those that mentioned tonight that they had a bad process, or they didn't enjoy the process, I'm sorry to hear that. We've gotten feedback from other folks that did, and so it seems to be a bit of a mixed bag. Again, I do think that if you are coming into this process with one specific goal and one specific desired outcome, this was never going to be the process for that. At the end of our process, or at the end of that meeting, it wasn't so much as a community dialogue, but a report back of all the data collected from CBI and the facilitators and their process. And so, you know, it's unfortunate that people left the room that continue to work so hard to mischaracterize our process after it has been very, very clear that this is not about a community dialogue. However, one of the data points that I will just share is that 72% of people that participated in the process were interested in a community dialogue. So, all that to say, at the end of the report back that Gary and I engaged in with about 18, 19 other people about a week ago, we listed, Gary and I had a list of recommendations that we would be tending to the council. The first of which, and a timeline for that. And I'm sorry that people that were here tonight missed that portion, because I do think that that's an important piece of our next steps. The first of which was to schedule a similar report back with electeds from Grass Valley and the Board of Supervisors that expressed interest in this process. And so we now have that scheduled. It's Monday, the 26th. We will be meeting with members of the Board of Supervisors, 2 members from the Board of Supervisors, and hopefully at least 1 council member from Grass Valley to report back and to share with them some of the things that, not just the data that was collected, but also some of the recommendations that Gary and I are moving forward to, hoping that they will move forward in similar ways. And that's our next step. And after we hit that step, or simultaneously, Gary and I are looking at other next steps as well. And as they become more developed, we will share them with you. And I know that's a little long-winded, but I wanted to cover a lot of ground there. I think transparency is really important. It has not been my intention or Gary's intention or anyone's intention not to be transparent about this process. We have been as transparent as possible at the end of meetings when we report back. We did not, as I had initially hoped, put up a website sharing information, and that is largely due to capacity. And that's just an unfortunate reality of being in a mostly volunteer position and limited staff time. So again, if there are any questions about process, Gary and I are happy to discuss that. Otherwise, we look forward to sharing next steps with you next time. Sorry, that was a long.
That's all right. Thank you, Councilmember. It was also thorough and clear. You know, I think it's, you know, I noted this several years ago, long before this process, but, you know, I try not to upset people by talking about being a process person so much, but we used to kill the messenger, now we kill the process. We blame the process when the outcomes don't present what we want. We used to shoot the messenger, but now we shoot the process. So, and I heard a lot of that tonight, and I know that there were very different experiences by folks, but I also heard a strategy being played out tonight to discount the work that's being done. That's unfortunate because it's a legitimate process, it's legitimate community dialogue, and it's precisely what we need, which is a third way forward, not making one pole right, one pole wrong, but how do we do this together? Because if there's anything we need in our world now, it's how we do it together, not how we continue to divide things.
And strategy is everything moving forward. Strategy is everything. The way that we show up, the way that we build relationships is everything. Liz, I've appreciated that about you so much. I've appreciated your efforts towards relationship. I've appreciated your efforts to speak, separately from some of the other stuff that's happened in the last 10 months in this community with this ask. And so this is how we move forward, in relationship and with strategy. And I'm always inviting folks to engage in that way with me, so thank you.
And to that end, let's see, Year of the Neighborhood, yay. And I did a presentation for the Arts Council last week about what the Year of the Neighborhood means in terms of arts and in terms of community volunteerism and connection. I am giving a similar presentation to the Planning Commission. And thankfully, is it Friday or tomorrow? Tomorrow, yes, before the Fire Safety Advisory Committee. And fortunately, I'm at the beginning of the Planning Commission meeting, so I'll get out of there in time before my next meeting. So a lot of good work. Evan, you're doing a great job. Also, still watching the Public Works guys. Great letter from Greg Chapman. Thank you, Greg. Meant a lot to the Public Works people to get that letter about the good work they're doing. It's great to hear from the community. I can talk about it. We can all talk about it. They're fantastic. But to hear it from the community was really important. With that,
I move that we adjourn.
One go back, sorry.
Okay, almost.
I'd like to thank Nancy for a second meeting with us.
And
you gonna stay?
She's really well behaved.
While we were pontificating, she was giving us suggestions for the ordinance revision that could come to you on the 28th to address all of your concerns from the dais. So thank you,
I can
Nancy.
see what's happening here. She's angling for this. It's like, thank you, Nancy. It's great to have you
Dean,
here.
watch your spot, man.
Okay, so you want to try that again?
I move that we adjourn this thing.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you all.
Well done on your first meeting.